Tom Turman.
Lock and lead.
Good morning. Welcome to the September 14th, Thursday, regularly scheduled meeting of your Board of County Commissioners. It's a little after 9 o'clock in the morning, and we'll call the meeting to order. Good to see so many folks here this morning. We start each meeting with prayer and the pledge. This morning we have Pastor, I believe it's Tom Turman here this morning. Is Tom here? Hey, come on up, Tom. Ministry coordinator for the cold weather shelter at Ferris Hill Baptist Church. And after that, I'd asked Commissioner Lynchard if he would lead us in the prayer this morning. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this beautiful day that you've provided to us. I thank you for this opportunity to come to you in prayer. Lord, I pray for wisdom and guidance for the leaders of our county as they conduct the business in an orderly fashion. Lord, for the community, I pray for patience and understanding as, Lord, there's people in need, I'm sure, at all times, and there's things as far as the county business that needs to be conducted. I just pray, Lord, for understanding on the part of the community. I pray for, Lord, for patience as the work is being done. Lord, I also understand that sometimes the right decisions are not popular. And Lord, I just pray that you would provide these leaders with just peace as they're conducting and going about this business. And Lord, just place on their hearts just an understanding and comfort with their day. Lord, we thank you for your blessings, and we thank you for just loving us and providing for our needs. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tom. Well said. I now move on to the approval of the minutes of the August 22nd, 2017 special meeting and the September 5th, 2017 special meeting. You have the minutes as provided as part of your backup. If you don't have any changes or questions, and I move approval of those minutes without objection. Hearing no objection, minutes for those meetings are approved. We are now going to move on to the approval of today's agenda. You have the consent agenda and the regular agenda. Would any members of the board wish to make any changes this morning? We'll start with Commissioner Parker. Good morning.
Good morning. No changes. It's a pleasant surprise to see the audience. We'll be meeting again in 2 weeks from today. Same time and place, y'all come back. This is a definitely probably the second best attended meeting I've seen since I've been here. So y'all start coming more frequent. Public comment is welcome on everything, and that way we can hear somebody besides the five of us talk. So thank y'all for coming.
Amen. Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's no changes today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, no changes.
Commissioner Lynchard.
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Tony. How are you?
Good morning.
Sorry about them Tigers.
Yeah, well,
all
the
right.
Tigers won,
Maybe
just the
next week.
wrong Tigers. Mr. Chairman, I do have, I sent you a copy this morning. We had a request from Escarosa, Florida, Restaurant and Lodging Association, use of our Visitors Information Center for a drop point for the next, for 3 days to collect hurricane relief supplies. Their organization is trying to centralize and take some supplies to Central and South Florida. I've given you a copy of that if you would consider that to add that to the agenda.
Absolutely. What a great idea. And it's one of the things that makes this county so awesome. Is folks willing to step up and help other folks around the state. You know, my mom just got her power back on in Leon County last night, but my sister down in Seminole, St. Pete area, she's still without power. But they're still going down to the church and providing meals for evacuees and folks. And so I think this is great. And Julie, want to say thanks for coordinating that and say thanks to Corey. And absolutely, love to add that in there.
And just as a quick update, Mr. Chairman, our EM team is supposedly headed back this morning. Thought they were headed to Homestead, but they were told that they could go ahead and come on back. So that's we appreciate the work that they've been doing to help folks down there.
Yeah, for those of y'all who don't know, Tom Lloyd, Daniel Hahn, and Brandy Whitehurst deployed from our Emergency Operations Center to lend support to Polk County and then to Clay County, and now they're on the way back up. So I'm sure they'll be glad to get home. If there are no additional comments or changes, then we will move approval of today's agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, today's agenda is approved. I will now move approval of today's consent agenda. I move approval of today's consent agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, today's consent agenda has been approved. We will have 2 public hearings this morning at around 9:30. Proposed ordinance related to amendment for a Scribner's error and proposed ordinance related to amendment to remove a condition placed on rezoning. So before that, we're going to move on. I think, first of all, that's right. You should have the peer proposals, the submissions in front of you. You should have a sheet at your respective areas. And staff has asked, Dan has asked that we go ahead and mark down our selections. Now, if you remember, I think we're supposed to pick 5, and then the top 4 in ties move forward. Dan has asked that we go ahead and submit these now so that while we're getting the presentations behind us, they can be tallying up the votes. So if each one of the commissioners would please mark your selections now, and then we'll get those submitted. Do we need to write our name on the, okay. All right. Now going to move on to today's presentation that we have. We have a presentation by Genesis, our consultant, that helped deliver a master site plan for the Navarre Park. And ahead of that, I know that it's difficult for us as commissioners to visit all of the different amenities that we have throughout the county. And I know that I certainly have visited a great many of the parks throughout the county throughout the years, as I'm sure all of y'all have. But maybe you haven't had the opportunity to get a tour of the current conditions of Navarre Park. And I had that suggestion brought to me that, hey, why don't you show folks kind of what the conditions are now, to where maybe it would help folks gain a better understanding of why the improvements are requested, and kind of set the table for it. So I went around and took some pictures and put together a little PowerPoint presentation that I'll run through real quickly. And I want to let you know before this pops up to show my fellow commissioners, these pictures are in no way meant to be a reflection on any efforts of our staff. Some of these things that are in the park are just worn out, okay? But staff is doing the best job they can with the cards they're being dealt, and they're doing a great job to try their best to make sure that the park is safe and that our amenities throughout the park are well taken care of. As I said, it just you're probably going to notice that a great many of the things on here are in the park now are just worn out. Can we go ahead and cue that up? Next slide. So as many of you know, Navarre Park also houses our, next slide, Tourist Information Center. It is the home of our Santa Rosa County tourism, really. It's our hub. We get about, I think, 6,000 visitors or more is the numbers that I think Julie's office had provided to me there in the Visitors Information Center. It houses the Children's Park, the John Duncan Memorial Park. Next slide. Here are the current children's playground equipment that we have in that park. There were additional amenities there, but as things degraded over time, those amenities were removed for safety reasons. Next slide. Here's a picture of the interior wall. These tiles were a fundraising effort, similar to what was done at Benny Russell Park. Commissioner Parker, this probably look a little familiar to you. I think the Pullum family and volunteers, they raised the better part of $180,000 that helped make this park and the splash pad possible. Next slide. You can see that a lot of these tiles are just kind of falling apart. Next slide. It's an example of trying to do what they can. It is true, duct tape can fix everything. Next slide. Next slide. Here's the current splash pad area. We spend tens of thousands of dollars maintaining this every year, and that was a picture that I took. We typically get standing water in and or around the splash pad area because of some drainage issues we have there. Next slide. This is what one of the portable storage sheds that we currently use to store items, I guess, in support of the park. Next slide. This is a boardwalk that I think was damaged after Ivan, I believe, and tried to do the best can to shore this up to keep people off of it while a determination, I guess, was made. I think it's clear that this is something that definitely needs to be demolished at this point. Slide. Slide. Here is the current swing set area, and you know, it does meet the definition of ADA compliant. There was a small sidewalk you can see that was put in a little over a year ago, I believe, and this is the engineered wood fiber, but very difficult to navigate a wheelchair through that material. Slide. It's a section of fencing there. I'm not quite sure what that went to, but we know that when we have the heavy rains there in the Sound area, we have 2 stormwater conveyance outfalls that enter the Santa Rosa Sound, and anytime we have heavy rains, the stormwater goes untreated from the north side of Highway 98 directly out into the Sound, and many times that can cue some health advisories, and the plan that's been put forth that we're going to hear about today would virtually eliminate that. Slide. Here's one of those conveyance areas. It's an open ditch where there's been some rock placed in there over the years, and you have a bridge there, kind of a pedestrian bridge. They did some shoring up of that a year ago, but all of the fencing guardrails throughout the property, you can pretty much put your hands on them and wiggle them, and they would come down pretty easily. Slide. Open power box, different trip and fall hazards. Slide. Here's the Black Hawk Memorial that Leadership Santa Rosa Class 29 delivered, and it's a great tribute. We have other memorials and remembrances for our military in the park, and currently we don't have any walkway connecting the memorial to other pathways in the park. This plan would help provide that. Slide. Some more examples of things kind of reaching the end of their usable life. Slide. 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 This is difficult to see, but the erosion and compromising of this seawall, pretty much the length of it, is deteriorating and very uneven, and the slope is starting to crack the walkway and cement the length of this walkway. This is on the far west end of the park. Slide. This is the stage area, or I guess the former stage area, and you've got the Tourist Information Center and the Black Hawk Memorial and the new public restrooms. Those things, other than them, everything else in this park is easily more than 12 years old or more, and it's just kind of worn out. And this is directly behind our new public restroom facility. Definitely something that we would want to look at removing. Slide. This is over on the east side of the park as you leave the Navarre Beach Bridge. If you were walking over from the beach and you were looking to enter on the side where the Panhandle Butterfly House is, this is the walkway that would get you across that second stormwater conveyance area that is located on the east side. Slide. It's a current Panhandle Butterfly House. You've got a 400 square foot building now. They do on average more than 10,000, 11,000 visitors a year through there. They keep this information, a logbook that people sign in, so it's reasonable to expect that they probably have more visitors than that. But bottom line, the numbers are very valid. It's incredibly impressive what they were able to do back in the 90s, converting this building into a butterfly house, and then the vivarium there, the picture to the right. Things have just been kind of cobbled together over the years, and it's a great labor of love that they've brought forward here. Next slide. I should mention that butterfly house, it was deemed by the staff that it needs a new roof, but the building is so decayed that it's not something that you would want to spend the money to put a roof on. Here's the view from Highway 98 looking into the park. The butterfly house would be to your left. This is the basketball court. It's the only amenity in the plan that we were unable to keep due to space considerations, but obviously we have outdoor courts at NYSA, we have the gymnasium at NYSA, and we have the gymnasium at the high school, and I would definitely be interested in working to bring additional basketball courts to Navarre Beach, NYSA, or other areas of the community to replace this one, which is in pretty rough shape. Slide. This is the view from the Tourist Information Center. If you're getting ready to leave this intersection, this median opening here that you guys are looking at on Highway 98, this is one of the highest traffic accident counts on Navarre Parkway. It used to be up there near the Walmart, but they got that one fixed. One of the parts of the plan calls for closing this median opening and having it to where you can only turn right out of this entrance moving forward. It'd be a dramatic safety improvement, and also it wouldn't allow folks to enter here directly into the children's play area. The children's play area is moved much farther away from this entrance and exit point. Next slide. And this just tells us what we already know, and that is that this park is maintained not by the Tourist Information Center and not by myself, or it's maintained by all of us, just like all of our parks are. And I wanted to make sure that everyone had an understanding of what the current conditions are at the facility. And now we get the opportunity to see Mark with Genesis. Thanks. We're glad that you were able to fly in. I know that Mark was stuck in California because he couldn't get a flight back to his home in Tallahassee. And it's been great to work with Mark. This started 2 years ago. I didn't know Mark then, This started actually before I got elected. There was talk about Navarre Park renovation, and there was a $300,000 grant put in that we didn't score high enough for. And then when I got elected, we submitted the grant again for more money, and we didn't score high enough. And ultimately, it ended up resulting in us trying to do a master site plan that would let us phase in these needed improvements over time and provide a vision for what this resource could look like and what it could possibly be. I think you've delivered a great product, and we look forward to seeing it. So thanks for being with us, Mark.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to be here and present the project. Genesis is a planning, engineering, and landscape architecture group. We're based in Florida. We're a Florida company. We started 30 years ago, and today I'm celebrating 30 years with the company. So it's been a pleasure. We've had the opportunity to work across the state and also in Georgia and other places and really around the world doing projects. My focus and the thing I love most, the thing I have a passion about most is parks and recreation projects. So the project we worked on, Navarre State Park, started many years ago. We did that master plan for DEP when they did that construction there. And then, of course, we know the evolution of time, what's happened there, and look forward to the next phase of that project getting started very soon, which we just completed design. And I believe the contractor has been selected, and hopefully that'll move forward pretty quickly. So needless to say, this has been an adventure working on the park. It's a very constrained project. But very excited. I'm excited to be here. It's a beautiful opportunity for the county to do some wonderful things for the community. Our first efforts were to look at the project overall, the property. We took a very close look at it. There's a number of elements. Of course, you can't see them all there. Commissioner Williamson did a good job of really expressing the status of the infrastructure that's in place. What we found was deteriorating infrastructure, quite frankly. The seawalls, the walkways, the park equipment, the pavement, all facilities, the picnic shelters, the facilities there are deteriorating. I think those are really depicted pretty clearly in the images. We also found significant ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, deficiencies across the park. Sand is not acceptable by ADA as ADA accessible, and that's where the children's playground really is deficient. And some other things from ADA, the sidewalks. As mentioned, there's not a path to the newest addition, the Black Hawk Memorial. Most of the facilities are beyond their economic life, which, over time with storm events, whatever have occurred there, the county, its staff has done what they could do with patching seawalls and other infrastructure there that just needs to be replaced at this point in time. We also found there were FDOT right-of-way issues, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Fortunately, we've been able to work through those. But the most important thing that I found and that we found there is opportunity. And there's an incredible opportunity for the county to do great things here, as I already mentioned. The DOT right-of-way issues are up in the northeast corner. A big chunk of that property was found to be in DOT right-of-way. The parking area was within the DOT right-of-way. Fortunately, staff and DOT were able to work together, and I believe those details have been completed to transfer that right-of-way back to the county so that issue is no longer an issue, if you will. That's been cleared up, and the county, I believe, if they don't already, will surely own that right-of-way. That was at one point in DOT's hands. We've also been working with them. Of course, they're going through the master planning process on 98 and for the widening of that roadway. And they've gone through a series of, they've started a series of public meetings for the PD&E, and the county certainly has been engaged, the county staff has certainly been engaged with that. We know the site is constrained with the 98 on the north side, the bay on the south side, and the bridge on the east side. Very constrained site, but it's there, and it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place, beautiful views, beautiful opportunity to impress the community and citizens. And so really, what is the opportunity? Well, we see the opportunity is that to construct a sustainable and accessible world-class park for the citizens of Santa Rosa County, for them to enjoy for generations to come. And it's also, in addition to that, it's going to create a real wow factor for people who are visiting here. Right now, visitors come, they go to the visitor center, and they quickly head to the beach. I think that when the park is finished, they'll be more likely to stay and enjoy facilities there or come back and speak about the park forever. Now, what's interesting about this site is there's two real components to it. I see it as one component being remembering our history, that west side. where there's more of a reflective, more passive park. And then on the east side is a very active side, where you're celebrating our future, where the children, families, and of all ages can come and enjoy, whether it's the Butterfly House Learning Center or the active play areas that are being presented there. So think of that in those two parts. And you'll see as we're moving forward how we're phasing this, how that works into play. So we developed, so the west side, again, is remembering our history side, and the east side, think of as celebrating our future with our children and families that will be able to come. So the things that remain in place, I believe, have already been discussed briefly. The Black Hawk Memorial will certainly stay in place. The Visitor Center will certainly stay in place. And the west, that's hard to say fast. The west restroom will stay in place because those are fairly, well, they're all new facilities and will be really emphasized throughout the park. And then the last thing is the fishing pier will be planned to be refurbished. But there's a lot of work to be done on that. We broke the project into essentially 4 phases, Phase 1A and B, Phase 2 and Phase 3. The eastern side is Phase 1 and A and B, and we'll talk about that first. The elements of Phase 1A are primarily to prepare the site for construction. There's a lot of site preparation. A lot of things need to be demolished on that site, including the Butterfly House and the existing vivarium. You're all very well familiar with the duck pond, and there's already an emphasis to fill that, and that we believe that can be done within this first phase. Parking expansion. We know the parking is a commodity here, and with this plan, we've added 55 parking spaces, which is a great benefit certainly to that part of celebrating our future and for those play areas, but also for the Butterfly House, because it provides bus parking and appropriate places for buses that bring children in, school buses that come in and turn around. Stormwater treatment in order to enhance water quality in the bay and collect some of that treatment, collect the stormwater that's coming off those parking lots and treat it before it discharges to the south is also important. And you'll see that's part of a grant also that the county currently has in place through, I think, Restore Act money. The waterfront, there's a lot of waterfront elements there. It's a complete replacement of the retaining wall that's there. The brick pavers that are at the site too, with every effort be made to preserve, protect, and pull those up and save those and reuse those throughout the park where appropriate. But the whole waterfront walkway and adjacent to the park elements, playground areas will be improved. So that's what we see in Phase 1A. That's really preparing the site for the other elements. Major infrastructure improvements there. You see, with the replacement of certainly filling the duck pond and taking out the pollutant loadings that creates, improving the parking areas, improving the shoreline. Major infrastructure improvements happening there. Phase 1B, that's when the elements start first come into play, proposing to construct the Butterfly Vivarium, which includes a greenhouse and their nursery. And we'll talk a little bit more about the butterfly complex in a second. Interactive water play area. This will be a fun place. What you have to remember, commissioners, on all of these plans here, they're very conceptual. The budgetary numbers we're coming up with are conceptual. I have a pretty good feel over the years of what those numbers will be or what they should be. The elements that we're proposing here are top-of-line elements. We found, especially in parks that are in high, very aggressive environments, it's important to use the best quality materials you can. You don't want to second guess that, because you'll find yourselves in a maintenance routine that just becomes overwhelming. We've seen that happen, and would encourage you to make sure you stay with the top quality materials and equipment and facilities that you can construct here. They'll withstand the test of time. We know that park facilities get used. Sometimes they get loved to death. And because of that, we want to make sure that the equipment and the facilities are there for long periods of time. So what we're proposing here in the budgets are very top quality materials to be placed in the park. A new restroom. The restroom is required to accommodate the the interactive water play area. Quite frankly, there's a state requirements that that'll be treated as a swimming pool. There are a lot of options we have to construct that interactive play, but the restroom would be required as part of that. And the playground is divided into two parts based on age groups. Again, top-line equipment, all ADA accessible, all available for families and children to enjoy the different elements there. So that's a major phase. That's a lot of work to be constructed. There are a lot of elements there. And that's really going to set the tone for that, celebrating our future segment of the park. Future phases. These elements have been identified for future phases primarily due to budgetary constraints and hope that other funding sources can be found to really construct these elements. Over time, the Butterfly House Learning Center, again, we'll talk a bit more about what that whole complex is planned to look like when it's completed. And then second, the park maintenance facility. That may need to come in sooner than later, just out of experience that we've had. When these parks start being heavily used, you'll find that having a maintenance facility on site is very important to keep equipment and materials readily available. Okay, talking about the Butterfly House and Vivarium. There are two components here, the Vivarium, which we proposed in Phase 1B, and a future phase, the Butterfly House Learning Center. Learning Center consists of the display area, which really is a welcome area where people, come in, children, families, schools, whoever want to come in and enjoy the Butterfly House, come in and check in, sign in, the gift shop. There's an office, break room, a single restroom, and some storage. Fairly small, tight facility for what they're intending to use it for. And then the Vivarium is 2,500 square feet. So overall, there's a total of about 4,000 square feet consisting of the Butterfly House Learning Center.
Hey, Mark, and when you say that the Vivarium is 2,500 square feet, you're including the field house there, so
Yes.
we've got storage sheds now, several of them that are in support of the current Butterfly House. So what we're doing is basically eliminating some of those storage sheds that we currently have on site, and you instead have a field house. So that's some of the square footage. I think the Vivarium itself was at 1,800 or...
You're right, yes.
But I just want to make sure you're aware that if we started with, I think it was a 6,000 square foot facility and reduced it down to this point to where conference rooms were removed, we combined the office and the break room together. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, the field house consists of a greenhouse for growing plants that will be placed in the vivarium that will attract butterflies, of course, and the nursery is where the butterflies are, I don't know how to say this, you folks back here could probably say it better than I could. So the facility is planned out. Lewis and Whitlock architects, very creative architectural group. You'll notice in these images that they're in the same architectural style as the visitor center. So it's going to be a beautiful facility. Looking forward to that. It's going to be a great attraction for that park. It really will. Phase 2 is we're calling Black Hawk Memorial Project. And that's because it's focused around the Black Hawk Memorial and remembrance of that event, along with other memorials that are there in the park. There's a lot of site preparation to get ready. The shoreline is really deteriorating to the point where that will need to be reconstructed. The major stormwater conveyance that runs through the center, that the images were provided, will need to be improved. There's currently a Restore Act grant money available for this, I believe, and I think the grant has been applied for. I'm not sure what the status is. Information provided to me by the county. That there's a biofiltration system that handles the storm runoff from the parking lot on the west parking lot. It included filling the duck pond and constructing the treatment swell that we have shown on the east side of the project, and also hydrodynamic separator that would go in line with that pipe in the ditch to take out all the the paper and trash that comes through, separates out the, the debris that comes through that pipe so it doesn't get into the bay there. So overall, there's a water quality improvement, and that's how the grant is currently set up in funding. $387,000 from the Restore Act funds, and then county matching work, $372,000. So some of the work in this plan has already been accounted for in this grant. The waterfront kayak launch will be placed there on the west side. You'll be able to get access directly from the parking lot down along a pathway and to the kayak canoe launch. Remembrance Plaza, what we found, and you guys see it all the time, there are a lot of celebrations that happen there. Remembrance, whether it's Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Flag Day, 4th of July, things happen there. And then there's also civic events that happen at the park here, whether it's breast cancer awareness or other things that happen in the park, that this plaza would be a perfect setting for those types of events to take place and to celebrate that history and those things that are important to the community. That would be a covered plaza. There's a lot of hardscape and landscape that would take place. Again, we're going to do as best we can to maintain as many of the bricks as we can. The Black Hawk Memorial Walk will provide an ADA accessible walkway, pathway from the parking area down to the Black Hawk Memorial, and then the other monuments that are in the park already will also be placed along that walkway to remember those individuals and events that took place. There's a new flagpole relocated along the alignment of the Black Hawk. I think that's already proposed or planned as part of the Black Hawk Memorial. And then there'll be a paver system that'll be in line with from the flagpole through the memorial, and I believe that's in the direction of where the accident occurred. There are also 2 picnic shelters part of Phase 2. One, a large picnic shelter with able to accommodate 6 picnic tables for large gatherings, and one that would accommodate 2 picnic tables. So there's picnicking. This is more of a passive side of the park where you come and enjoy those parts of the park. Phase 3 is the pavement. You'll find the pavement out there is deteriorating and needs to be replaced and restored. So Phase 3 is a lot of site preparation. The existing parking areas will be improved with new pavement, new striping, and facilitate ADA accommodations. Those ADA accommodations are set up so they have direct access to the pathways leading to the Black Hawk Memorial. There are 2 picnic shelters, one a large and one a smaller picnic shelter, as I've described already. So that's a very brief discussion. Again, the west side being remembering the history, east side being celebrating our future. We believe that the plan is the solid plan is a great starting point. There's great opportunities for you to create this place, a sense of place for the county and the citizens here. So, thank you.
Thank you, and I know we've got another slide there to come here, the money slide. That's the one that everybody wants to see. It's all about the dollars and cents, and it's a great presentation. I think it's a great plan. I think you've highlighted, that was the goal early on, was to try to highlight the areas that are important to Navarre and Santa Rosa County, that family, military, the protection and the highlighting of our natural resources and tourism. Those 4 things I would say are pretty important to Navarre, Holly Navarre, and Santa Rosa County as a whole, and I think that the plan that you've put forward shows that. And I know this plan was created by using the public comment and the feedback that was received in multiple public comment periods, and we had multiple meetings related to this as well. I wanted to let my fellow commissioners know that this is not a $6 million playground and splash pad project, okay? This will not divert any funds or resources, staff away from projects that they're currently working on, important infrastructure projects that they're currently working on. This is a plan that over time will allow us to improve safety, areas that we've heard we're not currently in compliance. This will allow us to create synergies with some ongoing projects that this board has already approved that would improve stormwater conveyance, that would improve water quality, to eliminate health advisories that we currently have in the sound after heavy rains. And it would provide some unique features. You know, as you talk about tourism and the number of visitors that we have here, all the communities across, the beach communities across Northwest Florida, they all have a beach, but none of them have a butterfly house. And none of them have things that are unique, that are also aligned with the values and things that are important to our community. So I'd love to, I'm hoping that you're encouraged and excited about the phased plan that you see in front of you. It's a big investment over time that could be delivered. And I obviously welcome any questions that we have for Mark or for myself. And we also have some members of the public here that I think would like to address the board on this item. I'd like to hear from members of the public first. Sure. If you would, go ahead and come forward. Just give your name and address for the record. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. My name is Mary Salinas. I am with University of Florida Extension here in Santa Rosa County on Dogwood Drive. I serve as the residential horticulture agent, and the Panhandle Butterfly House is one of the programs that falls within my responsibility. I would like to speak briefly about how the Butterfly House operates and who our visitors are. The University of Florida IFAS Extension and Keep Santa Rosa Beautiful, which formerly was Santa Rosa Clean Community System, we partner together under a memorandum of agreement to operate the Panhandle Butterfly House. So Kevin Smith from Keep Santa Rosa Beautiful and I serve as advisors and overseers of the Butterfly House and its volunteers. All other operations are performed by about 75 dedicated volunteers who donate thousands of hours every year towards this program. The Butterfly House is open seasonally from May through August, and then for a weekend festival in October. We host thousands of visitors from our community, other regions from Florida, other states, and also many other countries. Visitors are asked to sign our visitors log, and about half of them do that. On that log, they indicate their city and state or country, and then they're tallied monthly and then at the end of the year. For example, in 2016, we hosted about 3,600 visitors that came from 48 different states and from other areas in Florida. During that year, we also had 93 visitors that came from 23 different countries. And these are only the people that took the time to sign our logs. In comparison, in 2016, our absolute total was 14,400 visitors. And that number was determined by volunteers who have clickers who count everybody who comes in our door. Those visitors also include children who come for field trips. This year so far, 527 children have learned about butterflies and other pollinators through our curriculum that meets Florida Sunshine State standards. That high-quality program is in high demand by elementary school teachers and also by homeschool groups. And these children are not only from the local Navarre area, they come from all over the county. For example, Central, Dixon, and East Milton Elementary have sent their children to us for field trips. Also, at the request of school teachers, we've provided assistance to schools in Jay and in Navarre in establishing butterfly gardens so that they could have an outdoor classroom at the school. I firmly believe that with an upgraded Navarre Park and a state-of-the-art butterfly house, that Santa Rosa County can better serve our youth, our residents, and the tourists who come to see us. And Rob, I would like to echo your thought, which was there's a lot of places along the coast that have beautiful beaches and have parks, but none of them have the Butterfly House. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with, to have you listen to me this morning. I also have a summary sheet of all the statistics, if you would like these.
Absolutely.
Who should I hand these to?
Tony is fine. And I think Vice Chairman Cole, did I see you going for the, go ahead, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the effort you put into this, and I'm going to strongly support it. And I was especially encouraged on the stormwater factor on this, how they've included that for us to just continue pouring untreated water into our sound is just another, you know, it's almost as bad as us putting a fluid into the sound on the other side. So I remember when I first came to Florida, came down to this area and walking along this part of the beach on the sound and seeing fiddler crabs, just thousands of them scattering. And I think you'd have a hard time finding one or two today, if any. So for us to move forward with this, I'm in total support. It's very encouraging to see this kind of project come to fruition. So I hope I'm still around when it does. So, but I think it's going to be an outstanding project. And one thing that y'all forgot, you say, well, we only have the Butterfly House, but really we got more than that, because when you talk about the beaches, how much attention is really paid to our sound beaches? I mean, you got a long stretch, you know, from Gulf Breeze to Fort Walton Beach, and I can't think of perhaps only in Gulf Breeze where there's any other attention paid to an actual facility dedicated to the citizens of any particular county on the sound from one end to the other. So I'm going to be enjoying supporting you on this.
Thank you for your comments, Vice Chairman Cole, and I'm sure the community appreciates that as well. We will obviously have to talk about the funding elements of such a large phased project, but to know that you support the project is, I'm sure that's going to be very well received by the community. I know it is by me. Thank you. Would any other members of the community like to address the board? Hi, good morning. Good morning. Good. If you would, name and address for the record, please. Thanks for being here.
My name is Butch Branch. I'm the Life Center Coordinator, adjunct professor at Pensacola State College, Milton campus. Also a proud graduate of Class 20, Leadership, Santa Rosa County. I was a classmate of Roy's. And I received this letter this morning from Dr. Amos. Some of you might know Dr. Amos, our campus dean at Pensacola State College, and she asked me to speak on her behalf. Dear County Commissioners, I appreciate this opportunity to speak. I am a proud product of Santa Rosa County and its educators. This is my 37th year in education, 15 of which were teaching in this county, 7 in other states and overseas, and 15 at Pensacola State College. The educational and future success of the children in Santa Rosa County public schools, including my 5 grandchildren, does not start with their attending college. By the time students walk into the classrooms at Pensacola State College, they must be prepared to take on the rigors of higher education. Critical to a student's success in post-secondary education is the quality of education they are provided pre-K through 12th and the engaging opportunities presented to them. This education is not only books, standardized tests, and lectures. Students need to be involved. They need to participate in activities to make them think beyond what they see on TV or on their phones, something to light a fire of curiosity in the process we call learning. One key aspect of students I have learned is that they do much better if they are interested in what is being taught. To some, science is awesome already, but it may not be the top choice for many students. Their thoughts about science revolve around the latest high-tech gadgets. But science is life, and everything about life. The Panhandle Butterfly House is in our community has met this challenge by exposing thousands of students to the life history of numerous species of moths and butterflies, and gardens that expose them to the needed habitat. It is a catalyst that many students need. It is science coming alive and to see and touch. They are given a glimpse of what caring for an environmental habitat can produce. Some are awestruck at seeing metamorphosis, not just reading about it. This image is forever made in their mind, an image about science. And to understand it requires critical thinking. Once students participate in science, the door for their interests in other STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math, is sparked. The Panhandle Butterfly House does not force learning. It allows young and old to experience significant aspects of science. I have made sure that all my new staff and their families for the past 15 years are aware of the Butterfly House, and I encourage them to take the opportunity to visit. They frequently tell me that along with the beach, they cannot wait to take others to come visit. Children need a catalyst to get their imagination engaged, and so do adults, something to nourish their sense of wonder. We are never too old. A location such as a Navarre Park with a butterfly house would be this catalyst. Gardens rich in diversity and a quality learning center is the type of resource children need. Not only will they be able to explore and learn about butterflies, their pupa and larvae, but they will also have the opportunity to explore other plants and animals in the park. I believe a new Navarre Park with a butterfly house and gardens will enhance our ability to educate our future generations to become STEM professionals. Respectfully, Dr. Anthea Amos, Dean, Pensacola State College, Milton Campus. And thank you for giving me the opportunity.
It's a pleasant surprise. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Sure, yeah, come on up.
This is a little high for me.
There you go. Name and
Okay.
address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Louise Biernesser, and I am the current president of the Panhandle Butterfly House. It's been said before, but I'm just going to say it one more time. We are the only butterfly house in Santa Rosa County, and actually, we're the only butterfly house in this whole region. If you didn't know or you're not aware, we're 100% volunteer. So our volunteers don't have I'm from the north part of the county or I'm from the south part of the county. We are Santa Rosa County volunteers. And it's amazing because I live in Pace. It's an hour's drive for me to get to the PBH. That's my acronym, by the way. We have a volunteer in Holt. We have a volunteer, we have many volunteers from Milton, from Gulf Breeze, from Navarre, from everywhere. So I encourage you, our passion for butterflies, for the pollinators, for everything is all about, being part of the community, and our volunteers are. We, at the PBH, that community is not just Navarre. The whole community loves the Panhandle Butterfly House, and they love us because we care. They love us because we're there. Our location in Navarre Park is a wonderful place because we can educate not only the tourists, but we can educate our residents. We can teach children, and even when we're not open, we have beautiful gardens with signage that lets people that just walk through the park know, hey, I can put that in my yard. If you look on our Facebook page, our rating is 4.9 out of 5. We have over 3,700 fans on Facebook, and that's just in the US. If you take the 107 from 37 different countries. These people come. They come, they visit, they love our place, they get connected, they stay connected, they become part of the PBH family. And in becoming part of the PBH family, hey, Santa Rosa County is now their home. They love it. They're going to come back. So I just want to read a couple of these to you. These are Facebook reviews, and believe me, I took the shorter one, so I have to put my glasses on here. Okay. Alicia B. from Milton writes, "A beautiful place to look at butterflies. Thank you for all the volunteers that make this place great." Lucinda C., "My grandkids truly enjoyed it. A beautiful experience. Thank you to all the volunteers. They're awesome." So, you know, Philip M., well, he may need a little more education, but he wrote, "Such a wonderful place. Take your children there to learn about the cycle of life and how important these animals are to our ecosystem." And then, on a bittersweet note, we've even had a child from the Make-A-Wish Foundation come visit. Her name was Lily. She was middle school age, and she had leukemia. And, you know, she could have chosen any place to come. I mean, you know, there are a lot bigger places than the small Panhandle Butterfly House, but she chose us. She chose the Panhandle Butterfly House that sits in Santa Rosa County. We tried to make it very special for her, but I think her favorite thing of all was the fact that she got to release butterflies. That is a celebration of life. You know, Helen Keller once said that alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much. I respectfully ask that you do approve this Navarre Park Improvement Project and include the Panhandle Butterfly House Learning Center and Vivarium. Just think how much we can do together. We can do so much more. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Cole?
Mr. Chairman, I think the only thing the Pensacola Butterfly House lacks is somebody that has some enthusiasm about the subject. So.
We're gonna move on to board discussion unless any other members of the public would like to address the board. Yeah, come on up.
My name is Leah Cortello. Did you say address?
Yes, please.
2010 Catline Circle.
And I'm Rebecca Pullum, 6640 Codell Street. And Lee and I are here together representing the Starfish Project. The Starfish Project is a 501c3 formed to enhance and encourage the lives of special needs children in Santa Rosa County. As Rob mentioned earlier, my family has a vested interest in this park. John Duncan is my cousin, and he passed away at a very young age and has a daughter that is the same age as my son, and so we thought that it was only fitting to name that park after him. The women's group that I belonged to 12 years ago raised over $180,000 for that park, so we are passionate about it. We hear all of the naysayers about how close it is to 98 and the water hazards and all of that, but we still think it's a great location for the park, and we are here to show our support and to say that we would like to partner with Santa Rosa County and raise funds for the special needs equipment in that children's area, because not only do we believe that these children need to be able to play and have fun like other children, we also believe that this equipment aids in their development as well. Autistic children need sensory boards, so it's fun activity for them, but it also helps them develop. And Leah, my friend here, we both sit on the board of directors, and she's going to tell you her story and why she thinks that the park and the ADA improvements will be greatly appreciated.
I'm personally very excited about the park, and we spend a lot of time there currently. I have a little boy, he's 8 years old, and he's in a wheelchair. We have a hard time with the current situation getting from the sidewalk to the swings. So it's not exactly ADA compliant like we've heard this morning. So it requires me lifting him from his wheelchair and putting him in the swing and walking a little bit of a distance to get him there. It's okay right now, but he's 8 and he's 50 pounds, and it's not easy, and it only gets harder. So making it ADA compliant across the board, and not just where the swings are, but across the board in other areas on the actual playground would make things so much easier, and it would give us more opportunity to allow our son to play and to be able to give him more opportunities. I'm just very hopeful and excited, not just for my son, but for so many other children in Santa Rosa County that would be able to benefit from just this wonderful opportunity, and I hope that you'll be able to pass this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the work you did to, there's thousands of kids and families that have enjoyed the results of the project that you brought forward, and just want to say thanks. Hi, good morning. Thanks for being here, TJ. Name and address to the record, please.
I promise. TJ Goulet, 7774 Navarre Parkway, Navarre, Florida. I'm just here today to speak to the importance of investment in our tourism industry. And that can come in a lot of different ways, whether it's working with a great marketing agency, whether it's having tremendous people in the organization that run tourism, like Julie Morgan and her staff. But it also comes down to investment in infrastructure, which I believe includes the Navarre Park. I work closely with the tourism board. I work with the Snowbirds Club. I've been actively involved in the community. I also work with a number of local businesses in Navarre and throughout Santa Rosa County. And tourism is a huge part of everything that we do. It's one of our top 3 industries in this county as far as economic impact. And anytime you have something that important, you have to look beyond just short-term numbers and look at long-term investment and the return you get off of that investment. We've seen through the investment that we've made as a county over the last 10 years, huge returns starting to come to play. We see that last month our take for tourism tax dollars was up 36.2%. We're looking at a double-digit increase again this year. We've had local business people invest tens of millions of dollars by building a new hotel on the beach. We're looking at more housing out on the beach. We're looking at lots of upcoming great projects. And I think as a county, we need to ensure that we continue to grow that by reinvesting some of that money back into infrastructure, and not just roads and bridges and sidewalks, which are all extremely important, but also tourism infrastructure. And I think Navarre Park is a great representation of where that money can be spent. Much in the same way that we've spent money on the Milton Riverfront, that we've spent money on the Baghdad Park, where we've spent money on expanding our reach through investment in the Santa Rosa Chamber building. That's also going to be a welcome center here in Milton. I think Navarre Park is in that mold of spending good money to make sure that we have the infrastructure, that we have a desirable place for tourists to come. The Butterfly House is an extraordinary reason why many of our seniors, as a Snowbirds Club president, many of the seniors come here. That is a big part of why they come here, not so much for butterflies, but they love the gardens and they love to sit out there. In fact, if you go out there, you'll see them sitting out there for hours on end. So I'm here to just say that as a business person and as someone from Navarre, I hope that you continue to invest in the infrastructure of tourism and make Navarre Park part of that program. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Pamela Murphy, and I live at 2392 Caribou Circle in Navarre, right adjacent to the wonderful soccer fields where I get to watch the games from free in my backyard. Lovely. 20 years ago, one citizen planted a seed in the heart of Navarre, bringing together citizens of Santa Rosa County, and through their dedication, hard work, and nurturing, The Panhandle Butterfly House took root, blossomed, and continues to flourish today. 19 years ago, I took root here in Santa Rosa County and have lived in Navarre for 16 years. Last year, I became one of those volunteers at the Panhandle Butterfly House, and I continue to help sow the seeds, educating our youth, citizens, and visitors alike, no matter if we're open or even when we're closed, working in the gardens. Going forth with the Navarre Park improvements is nurturing for the future for our Santa Rosa County citizens and for all people. We at the Panhandle Butterfly House can and will take it further with a bigger, better vivarium and butterfly learning center in a safer, more accessible, and in an ecologically sound and productive environment. We anticipate exponential growth in our visitation, and we will rise to meet those needs. Extending our hours of operation, increasing educational opportunities and programming, enhancing our award-winning youth curriculum, and even providing community service for our high school students. We are a group of committed community volunteers who greet over 14,000 people in just under 108 days. We can do more, and I ask for you, our county commissioners, to plant the new seed that will make the heart of Navarre beat stronger and, in turn, all of Santa Rosa County. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning.
Doing. Briefly, my name is Shannon Barnes, and I'm soon going to have my first grandchild. My husband is an engineer and recently traveled through the Butterfly House. He said his grandchild would never go through it as it is because it is a danger, very dangerous to anyone who spends any time there. And he said his child would never go through there. And he spoke as an engineer with a PhD in engineering, actually. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of point it out that it's not only an eyesore, it's a danger.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we're going to move on to board discussion unless any other members of the community wish to address the board. Okay. I see that Commissioner Parker did take a break, but I just wanted to say that I don't view this as a Navarre project. I view this as a Santa Rosa County project, and I think it's one of those types of projects that I don't want to speak for y'all of why you put yourself through this and ran for office, but I know this is one of the projects that, one of the reasons why I ran. You know, I told the folks with the Butterfly House that shortly after taking office, I didn't know anything about what they do. I certainly didn't know they had almost 4,000 Facebook friends, and I wasn't a believer. My kids changed that. You know, initially, I was trying to put a parking garage where the Butterfly House is. Yeah, that did not work out well. But the reality is, you know, inherited a pedestrian walkover project that was a little controversial, and it didn't look like that would necessarily work out, but trying to find a way to enhance access to what many of us believe is Navarre's kitchen and one of its most valuable assets, Navarre Park. And so I looked at what would be the highest and best use of that east side of the park, and parking garage would be $2.5 million to add 60 spots. And it's not the highest and best use. I think we've heard what the highest and best use is and the uniqueness that it can provide. But there's no doubt that it's a significant investment, and the folks with the Butterfly House know that they are going to need to help with the funding of that project. Much like we know that there's unique aspects of this plan that would further separate Santa Rosa County and show the importance that we place on those with any and all abilities. And I think that's a way that we can show how big our heart is. And it's something that I know that we're all definitely in support of. This is a plan that was developed over a period of years. This is a community-supported plan, and, you know, the sad thing is that rec fund dollars alone can't fund this project. If I were to dedicate every dollar of rec funds for the next 20 years, I couldn't fund the first phase. If I took the $700,000 that we currently have in rec funds and I saved every dime of rec fund dollars for the next 20 years, I couldn't fund the first phase of $2.9 million. I know that today is only an information-only item. It's an opportunity for the board to ask questions. I don't want anyone to think that I'm going to be looking for a vote today. That's not why we're here. But I would like to ask my fellow commissioners to support the allocation of a portion of tourism dollars, $1.5 million, toward the first phase of the project. The first phase of the project, roughly $800,000 is the playground and the splash pad. We will cover that with rec funds and with the $200,000 or $220,000 local option sales tax, district-specific rec funds and ADA funds that have already been approved. The remainder of the project, I would like to recommend that we dedicate a portion of our TDC reserves, $1.5 million of it, as well as a portion of the already approved Restore project, $200,000 of that $700,000 project, that we would commit those funds to this project. The portion of it that does the same thing. The Restore project that we've approved to improve water quality fills in the borrow pit or duck pond, and $200,000 of this project calls for the same thing. And then lastly, there's been a building that the Navarre Board of Realtors is currently in. That was sold, and there was $250,000 that's been sitting in an account for a number of years that is dedicated toward a future community center. I believe that those funds could be better put to work toward this project now, and so I would ask that the board approve the release of those funds. So that's kind of the verbal request that I have before you today that we would put on a future agenda. Number one would be the use of TDC reserves for phase one. The two would be the release of the $215,000 that's currently set aside for a future community center. And number three would be to approve the Black Hawk Memorial project to be added to our legislative priorities. And with that, I think we've got a lot of information. We've got a lot of public comment here. I appreciate Vice Chairman Cole's support. And now I'd open it up to any questions or comments from my fellow board members. And thank you for your time. Commissioner Salter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great project, great input from the community. My only question was going to be how you're going to pay for it. I think you've come up with an initial good plan. One of the other questions was going to be what is tourism related and what's not? And how can we use tourist development funds? There's some criteria at the state level on how you can use those funds and how you can't. Just want to make sure that everybody understands that. Over time, as we prepare budgets, I'd like to see these type things in the budget more than just coming out and saying we need the money. So hopefully we'll be able to get this done, just as long as we concentrate on tourist development funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salter, and I apologize for not mentioning that sooner because that's a very valid concern. And I had talked to our county attorney to make sure that even though it's a small portion of the overall project and it is, well, I guess it's probably about half of what we would end up having in TDC reserves at the end of this year, still need to make sure that it's an allowable use under the statute. And I had talked to the county attorney about that. It is an allowable use under the statute. We would have to designate which things we were improving that the board deems are tourism related. Obviously the Panhandle Butterfly House or vivarium, that's something that we've dedicated tourism dollars to before. It's reasonable to expect that a portion of the splash pad expense could go toward that, although that's not what I'm recommending. And then currently, that is the headquarters for our Tourist Information Center. So we service the debt on that building with tourism dollars. We service the Navarre Park with tourism dollars. It's reasonable to expect that if someone is going to be visiting that facility, that they're going to need a parking space to park in, and that they're going to need a restroom to use. So we have evidence throughout the state of tourism dollars being allocated for those specific amenities, and it is well within the allowable use of the statute. And so I don't believe that we'd have any issues there. But you're right, we would need to clearly designate, if you approve the use of a portion of TDC dollars, what specifically it would be going toward. And I will get that information before next meeting, Commissioner Salter, for sure. Commissioner Lynchard, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a great-looking plan, obviously grand plan for what is a relatively small park. My concern would be, how do we fund it? You know, $6.5 million plus. We didn't see the slide that had all of the dollar figures on it, but I know it's about a $6+ million plan, and so that's my question there. How do we fund it long term? And so you're talking about doing phase 1A and 1B initially combined?
Yes, Commissioner Lynchard. Yes, Commissioner Lynchard. And the $1.5 million phase 2 is specific to the Black Hawk Memorial phase, and that would be part of the request to go to the state for them to fund all or a portion of that. As I continue reloading rec fund dollars, I would be able to hopefully offset some of the overall cost of phase 2. And then phase 3 is primarily parking lot improvements and reconfiguring of the entrances for safety improvements that would tie in with Department of Transportation improvements. So that $746 cost in phase 3 really is a not to exceed price, because you know most of the work at that point has been done, and there will be some shared expense with the widening of Highway 98. But you're right, the heavy lift is that phase 2 for $1.5 million. What if the state doesn't fund any portion of it? At worst case scenario, Commissioner Lynchard, getting the $3 million, $2.9 million, $3 million phase 1 done, that basically improves the safety and completely transforms the easternmost portion of Navarre Park. And it does address many of the parking and safety and stormwater conveyance and water quality and current degrading amenities that we have on that side of the park. And we may have to change the plan, because you know that 1.5, we may not be able to get funding for it, and I may have to change that. You know, the stage may have to go away. You know, we may have to focus just on those elements that would enhance the Black Hawk Memorial. I completely understand that. But the first phase is the biggest cost, and it would make the most dramatic improvement. And so that's the heavy lift.
What about the, is the Butterfly House, your ongoing operating expenses? How are those handled?
Right now, I believe they do that with their own contributions, and then they have gotten a grant award every year to help pay for the cost of the butterflies that they ultimately make part of their Monarch Madness and release. But other than that, they're an all-volunteer operation.
You're going
we don't support that, Commissioner Lynchard, if that's what you're asking.
And that was my question. The ongoing maintenance of the building, quadrupling the size of the footprint, I guess, of the structure there.
Yeah.
So it's going to come with significant increase in overhead moving forward.
And another valid point to consider, and a very prudent point to bring forward, Commissioner Lynchard, that we talk about bringing amenities online. You got to service those amenities after they're brought online. And I think one of the things this board has done is tried to realize the importance of growing our tourism economy and we see what kind of benefit that can provide. Shortly after taking office, I relocated an office there in the Tourist Information Center building, and the roof was leaking in my office. And I found out that the roof was leaking in a couple of other offices. And when I called to ask for the repair, building maintenance from Santa Rosa County, the great folks, they showed up to fix it. And I started asking and found out that general fund dollars from building maintenance were paying for the maintenance of a building. And I started wondering, well, we're paying for this building with tourism dollars. Why would we not pay for the maintenance of that building with tourism dollars as well? It only makes sense. So then I started looking at the upkeep of the park, and now we've saved probably close to, I don't know, $100,000, $75,000 to $100,000 by transferring the expense that was borne by property tax payers and the general fund budget. Now as part of our tourism, visitors are now paying for that. And I think that would apply here as well. And this park is going to require more maintenance, but thank God Julie is kicking serious tail with tourism, and we see what the hotel has brought. And hopefully, as we look at other projects like developing a youth athletic complex that would continue to, generate additional revenue, we'll have more amenities to take care of. But bottom line, I think we would take care of the maintenance of this park with tourism dollars and not general fund dollars. I will make sure that we have what the proposed additional maintenance costs would be by next meeting. Would that be something, Commissioner Lynchard, that you would support if I got those questions answered, though, an allocation of a portion of TDC reserves toward the funding of Phase 1 of this project?
I think it would probably be appropriate, as long as it's permissible, to allocate some TDC reserves to the project. We just need to be mindful of what we're spending our TDC dollars on a go-forward basis. We've added the maintenance of all of the medians down in the south end of the county, the FDOT right-of-way projects. So that's a significant amount. We have a legislative request in to allow a portion of TDC to be used for law enforcement to support our sheriff's efforts. So we just need to see what the numbers shake out as. You mentioned a youth athletics center in the south end of the county.
Or just anywhere.
The ball fields that we're talking about?
Yeah, anywhere.
But you're also proposing to spend your entire rec budget towards this.
Well, I have a little over $700,000 in the rec fund budget now, and I was proposing to put $600,000 of it toward the first phase of this project. And so as it re-ups, it's reasonable to expect that it's going to take a year for this first project, if the board approves the funding, move forward with that. But I think as we look at the rest of the reserve dollars that are in there currently, even though it'll grow pretty significantly now, that would be an awesome project for the county. Whether it go in the south portion of the county or out by the interstate or wherever we can put it, that would be incredible. And I would do everything I could to share that cost and burden with you.
Thank you.
Yep. Any additional comments by members of the board? I know that, go ahead, Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
Great presentation. Thank you for flying in and delivering it. Thank you very much to the passionate ladies that spoke on behalf of the Panhandle Butterfly. I appreciate you reading Miss Amos's letter. Please tell her that we appreciate her input. She was actually one of my high school English teachers, so a terrific lady. Thank you, Commissioner Williamson, for getting behind this and the input. Obviously, 30-plus people probably here to speak on it. I think it's, like I say, that's right up there with stormwater turnout, so I think it's great. I look forward to hearing more about all the questions that have been brought forward today. I was not prepared to make any decisions one way or another. This is the first time I've seen it. The park complete plan, and the numbers have been this week, so definitely think it would be a great asset to the community. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your comments. Commissioner Parker. Commissioner Salter.
Mr. Chairman, let me just say this, since we have so many people in the audience. Every commissioner sitting up here today, we're looking at some type of major recreational park or function in our district. So that's why we have to ask all the questions about how we're going to fund these things. I know Commissioner Parker and I, we're looking at how do we add more football fields to the greater Pace area? And that's going to be expensive. So how do we come up with those funds? So when we ask these questions, it's not that we're against it, but we have to make sure that each district is treated equally when it comes to funding. So don't get the wrong idea. We all have major challenges in front of us. We're just trying to figure out how to pay for it. Thank you.
Well said. Okay, so for the next meeting, need to provide for Commissioner Salter's questions. I just made you a doctor. You see how quick that happened? That was amazing. Confirming what is tourism related as a portion of phase one, what would be an allowable use, I'll get with the county attorney on that. What would be the ongoing maintenance costs or estimated ongoing maintenance costs for these improved or new amenities that are proposed as part of number one. I'll provide a proposed way to fund phase one of the project and a breakdown. We've heard that we have verbal support for the project, and I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but I certainly didn't hear any opposition, and I believe I heard that there would be support for the allocation of a portion of TDC dollars toward this project, once we make sure that it's an allowable use under the statute. And so we'd be directing staff to put this item on the next set of agendas meetings, and we'll make sure to let everyone know and communicate throughout the process. But it would be my understanding that at the next set of meetings, the board would be taking action on the presentation that we've heard today, and that's when we'd find out if we're going to be able to fund phase one of this project and move forward. So appreciate everybody coming here today. If there are other folks within your circle of influence that couldn't be here, we do have some great projects that are coming up in Santa Rosa County that are going to dramatically improve youth athletic facilities, that are going to improve tourism, and we need to get behind them all as best we can. We're going to be hearing about them in the weeks to months to come. But this is one that these projects take a long time to develop, but we finally have one that's ready to move forward, and the next set of meetings we will definitely do that. It is 10:30 now. We were scheduled for the public hearing an hour ago, but we're going to move forward to a 10-minute break at this time, and we'll come back at 10:40. want to thank everyone that came today and want to say thank you to my fellow board members for their questions and for the time that they spent in consideration. I know that added a lot to the backup and to the time of the meeting. And we don't get the time to talk about these things very often, but I did want to follow up on one thing and assure Commissioner Lynchard that I share your passion for youth sports. I know how important that is for you in the community and delivering these enhanced community amenities. And I will camp out on the front porch of the Capitol, if need be, to try to bring dollars back here to support those efforts. So I'm in the boat with you on that one. We now have public hearings. I will now open the public hearing for, number one, the proposed ordinance related to amendment for a Scribner's error. Would any members of the public wish to address the board on this item? Any members of the public wish to address the board on this item? We are on the 9:30 a.m. public hearing, the proposed ordinance related to amendment for a Scribner's error. Would any members of the public wish to address the board on this item? If not, we are going to close the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed. I will now move approval of the ordinance related to the amendment for a Scribner's error without objection. Hearing no objection, the ordinance is approved. I will now open up the public hearing on the second item. The public hearing is now open for the proposed ordinance related to amendment to remove a condition placed on rezoning 2003-R-046. That public hearing is now open, and would any members of the public like to address the board on this matter? Any members of the public wish to address the board on this item? Okay, then I will close the public hearing and we'll move approval of the proposed ordinance related to amendment to remove a condition placed on rezoning, item 2003-R-046, without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. I just noticed that we have Ms. Tucker here as well, supporting the Black Hawk Memorial and the activities going on there. Thank you for being here this morning. We are now moving on. We have previously approved our consent agenda, so we are now moving on to our regular agenda. So we're going to be turning 3 or 4 pages. I'll let you get there.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Commissioner Parker, you recognized?
Are we going to do the Indian Bayou presentation?
Oh, I apologize. I forgot we did have another presentation on there. My bad. Before we get to the regular agenda, we have a very important update on the Indian Bayou. And I will turn that over to Tony.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we just wanted to bring back this item and update you. As you know, we've received a letter from the Water Management District, and we've responded to that letter with the action items that we have initiated and plan to undertake next 30 to 45 days to improve our any sedimentation issues related to the dirt roads, particularly in the San Juan area, and we will be looking at other dirt roads in that area as well. I think that we do have, as a result of these ongoing discussions, I guess one thing that we seem to have to approach water management with was there seemed to be an enhanced interest in this area after the onset of the I-10 project. And I suppose we kind of took exception to the idea that we were somewhat, that our dirt roads were somewhat a new source of sedimentation and maybe at a same level as this construction project that has been going on for the last 9 to 12 months. In looking at that, also the property appraiser's office had offered to utilize their drone to show the evidence related to the I-10 project, and particularly that runoff that was coming from Avalon Boulevard and into the ponds and wetlands along that area and into Indian Bayou. So we supplied that video to the Water Management District as well. We plan to continue to work this subject. We know we have continue to have many dirt roads in our county. We in no way would want to try to infer that there's not some sediment that leaves a dirt road. we all know that's true. We all also know that the resources over time of a county is to improve roads when we can, and we've done that over the last 50 years. We have much less dirt road area now than we did 50 years ago. So we'll continue to work at that. We'll follow the board's guidance. We did want to show that drone video since we have that available, if you'll allow us.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Parker?
I was just going to say for the rest of the board, Mr. Goodmillion, I had the opportunity to talk with Mr. Brown, property appraiser Greg Brown, on Friday of last week, and he did say as soon as the first opportunity arises, they're as well going to fly over on the north side of the interstate so that we make sure, get as much information as possible. And I, again, just wanted to thank him for using his resources to provide us with this.
Thank you, Commissioner. There we go.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we are having a technical difficulty here. I think probably many
Move on to
of...
public comment?
Yes.
Would, any members of the public wish to address the board on this item while we are getting the video queued up? Hi, good morning. Come right on forward, please. If you would, name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Will Dunaway, the law firm of Clark Partington. I represent pro bono Miss Judy Walker, who is a county resident in the Monterey Shores area on Indian Bayou. My purpose of joining the neighbors, and Ms. Walker in particular, was to provide voice and raise awareness to this situation, to try to get action to repair, not repave, this watershed. We believe there's a real win-win for the county here in this situation. And the win-win is that instead of pointing fingers and assessing blame, is that we urge you to take a leadership role in this entire watershed. The idea is for you to provide the voice of the citizens and work with the DOT, who unquestionably is causing and contributing to the illegal sediment runoff. That is absolutely the fact. But to look at this in a holistic plan and to restore this watershed, you can act now both as the violator and the regulator to bring FDOT, FDEP, the Water Management District, and yourselves to the table along with the residents and combine your resources, both the fines and the maintenance that you do, to develop a long-term solution that's not just a quick fix job on this watershed sedimentation runoff. This is not about whether FDOT is contributing or is more to blame for this problem. It's about who will step up to bring these four public entities together, two of which are the county and the DOT. But you have the role of being both the regulator and, in this situation, some of the violation. But as the regulator, you have the ability to bring these agencies together. And that's what we've been urging behind the scenes, and that's what we're urging you to do here. So far, it's the citizens who feel like they've been battling this problem alone. And until recently, they felt like they were losing. They're asking you today to switch sides and join them in putting a solution together that will protect this watershed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments. Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized.
If I could you go back to the podium?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cole.
No problem. And I do question one thing. I'm 100% for this. We need to clean it up. You know, I've been, just recently come off of being chair for probably 5 or 6 years of the Bay Area Resource Council. When we had a similar situation that went into Carpenter's Creek with the development of the I-110 corridor, a big blowout, damaged the creek.
Yes, sir.
I was on the front page with Mike Pampantonio, you know, getting on to these folks about this. What can we do? What can we correct? So I say all that just to, you know, so folks know that I'm not just sitting here, you know, not concerned with what's going on. I think that's the feelings of this whole board. We're concerned with the quality of our water anywhere in the county. You know, recently, just speaking about the Navarre Park and improvement of water quality there. But I'm concerned when you say we're the regulators, because I'd like to know how you feel we fit in that capacity. We certainly are one of the players. We certainly need to address this. But when I look at, you know, FDEP, when I look at Army Corps of Engineers, they outstep up us as regulatory agencies when it comes to water. You know, even the other agencies that are ahead of us. So that's my only concern, to stand there and say we're the regulators. I want to clarify that, you know, there's other agencies, Water Management District, that are all ahead of us. You know, I'm certainly willing to get in the game and move forward with our citizens to address these problems, but I just need clarification on how you feel we're the regulators versus, and saying that in public and on record that we're the regulators versus the people I feel are actually the regulators.
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to clarify that. Certainly, the Northwest Water Management District is the permitting authority, and in fact, they issued the permit for the I-10 project, and you've probably seen a copy of that permit. That permit has the solution to the road, the I-10 road work, as a direct discharge into Indian Bayou. So they knew that was going to be the case. Where I believe that you are, as the county, where you can help us, you have best practices for stormwater management. You have in your codes the practices that are to be put in place. And more importantly, because the Clean Water Act is the violations that are occurring, we all have a responsibility, citizens and the county, to protect that through the Clean Water Act. And so where you can help, Commissioner Cole and commissioners, and through the county staff, is you can be the catalyst for the citizens to bring all of these, the DOT mainly, to the table with the Water Management District and the FDEP. And what has happened, and Commissioner Parker knows this, we've had meetings, and we appreciate, he's been involved, we've been working behind the scenes. But what happens is at the regulation, at the table, the citizens are there and they're presenting the problem, and the DOT is working with the Water Management District, their sister agency, and they're saying, okay, we're in compliance mode. We're working to work through the problem. And they've been doing this for over a year, and we're just not seeing any action. And we appreciate the county administrators' action that is happening now. But what I'm saying is, if you as the county got at that table and said, we have collectively are causing this problem, whomever, I mean, we can, if it's 90% DOT and 10% y'all, or just 1% you, or whatever it is, you have the ability that the citizens do not, to bring these people to the table, bring the Water Management District to the table, bring the DOT to the table and say, fix this. We've got a violation. Fix this. How are we going to do it? How are we going to, as your earlier discussion was about a cost, where are we going to get the cost? Well, maybe there's some fines that are going to come out of DOT. Maybe there's some maintenance, some monies that y'all have already identified. About $180,000, I think, was to pave San Juan. Hear the input from the citizens, and let San Juan go back to grass. Let it repair itself. Nobody's accessing it in any event. These are solutions that are probably best for a work table around, but those are the kinds of things. That could easily be $200,000-$300,000 that could be put to solving the watershed issue. So when I say that you're the regulators, that's what I mean, Commissioner Cole. You have the ability, because it's your county, it's your watershed, and it's your citizens, and it's the Clean Water Act, which is a violation.
Okay, and I just thought that should be clarified, because, people want to lay it on us.
Absolutely. I appreciate you allowing me that opportunity.
I've even been out there, stopped along the interstate, taking pictures of the laterals under I-10.
Yes.
From the research I've done, those silt fences, all that are supposed to be maintained after every storm event, at least inspected. I've got pictures that show the collapse of the first silt fencing, the new silt fencing, the sediment that's out there, and absolutely nothing's been done. I mean, it's obvious from the growth in the plants around there, nobody's been out there maintaining them laterals. So, like we've done with the drone, like the pictures I've taken, to start putting together a portfolio of items to go to the state like you're suggesting, and I'm certainly willing to work, with whomever we need to get that done.
That's absolutely welcome. Thank you, Commissioner Cole. That's exactly what the citizens are asking, because when they go, and they have been to these meetings, and those meetings have resulted in they're being told by some of the state regulators that we're in compliance mode and we're working it. But or not at all. As you said, you keep going out there and it keeps being violations. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
I was just going to state while you're here, and first, let me not forget, even though that sometimes it puts me at the forefront of criticism, I appreciate Ann Delaney. I know she's in the back of the room with the Pensacola News-Journal. Unfortunately, if it wouldn't have been for the press recognition, I don't think I would have had some of the phone calls that I had coming out of Tallahassee that, start getting concerned when, state level agencies don't get the best view. I will go on record as well saying that I have talked with State Representative Williamson, former commissioner of the district, several times, and he is really proactively, been working with DOT. But again, unfortunately, even as Water Management told me on a phone call, DOT is saying, well, hey, we're not the problem. I appreciate everything you said, because at the end of the day, citizens and really myself, and I'm assuming probably every commissioner as well, we get tired of the bureaucracy. I mean, even sometimes you try to do things. Commissioner Williamson just talked about this park, being a vision that started before he took office. That's over 2 years ago, and that's something that, I've told people in groups, one of the painstaking things is the speed of bureaucracy, but it's the requirements now and all the hoops. And unfortunately, our attorney was gone at the last meeting where we talked about this to address some of the things I talked with him about outside of a meeting, which would be if we basically abandon the maintenance of the road, that we possibly would have to settle some costs with the adjacent property owners for diminished value. And I guess some of the things that I think would take board action to direct him to reach out to those folks and see some different things. I had the opportunity earlier this week, and this kind of prompted in my mind while you were talking, is why I wanted to sort of give it credit and go back to, as well as something that ties in with the Navarre Park plan that Commissioner Williamson said. We've got the, I think it's called Avalon Landing, the RV park right there by the interstate on Avalon, actually directly across the road from the ponds that we'll see in this video here in a minute. But it sits on Indian Bayou, and huge bed tax collector for the county. And with that being said, I think maybe something, and honestly, before you came today, I haven't heard this in my mind. If somebody said it, I don't remember it, but directly across from these ponds you're about to see, I think you may actually see in the video right there, there is our bed tax dollars being collected from that large RV park. And so maybe we could use some tourism development dollars to protect this watershed. And if, like you said, even if we can't go in and fix the state problems and continue to stay on that, the exact same way that Navarre's dealing with their sound and the water quality and the unfortunate, safety hazards with the signs that were shown with kids not being able to play. That's what folks are experiencing here, not only that live on the water, but there's a county boat ramp. Actually 2 boat ramps right in the vicinity, one on the north side, one on the south side, but there's a county boat ramp that I'll be able to point out in the video that this sediment is directly going to. And so I just wanted to share with you that point's brought up. So I guess maybe I'll have to put it on the agenda again for the next meeting, because this is a presentation as well. But kind of giving a heads up to the attorney, I would try to find out, what avenues that we could possibly use some of those reserves to protect it, because I think that's a very, very valid argument with bed tax collection, which I know is one of the biggest requirements, is why I bring that up, and county boat ramp, and which is all even aside from the Clean Water Act. But I think when the board sees this video here in a minute, it'll be very apparent that it is unfortunate, because it's I don't see how it could be helping the environment. So I appreciate you jumping on this pro bono. And again, I appreciate Ann Delaney, even though, like I said, I'm probably at the spear of the criticism. If it wasn't for the press picking this up, I don't think we would have got this far.
Well, I appreciate those comments, Commissioner, and what the citizens would like, again, as I invited you, they want you to join their team so that they're not fighting alone. They're not fighting you, and that's important, and that's why we're not trying to be here casting blame. What we're crying out for is a holistic solution to this watershed, and this watershed is more than just the drainage on this pond or the drainage out of this ditch. This is, I-10 split this water, right? It was a swamp. And I-10 came through it, and that's a reality. But it still is hydrologically connected. And so how it moves and flows, we know, the scientists know that study. They can help put the input in, and a small amount of money could go a long way in this area, and that's where I was talking about the win-win. You could have a real win for the environment for a small amount of money committed, and you have the DOT's attention. Use that attention with the Water Management District and with FDEP, and come out in a leadership role on this, and come out a winner for you, the citizens, and the environment.
Thank you. Yes, okay. Ms. Albrecht, good morning.
Hey, Barbara Albrecht, 1528 East Brainerd. This video is very, very disturbing, but this is only from the stormwater ponds at the Avalon Boulevard Exchange. There is another issue happening in the other lobe, that is where Monterey Shores is, and that's directly connected to San Juan. And that's where the interstate fragmented this wetland system in the 70s, when we didn't know then what we know now. Commissioner Parker, you just pointed out that the only reason that we're having this dialogue is because Ms. Delaney from the News Journal picked it up, and that's really disappointing to me, because...
Well, I just want to clarify. I said
Sure.
I think the only reason I got the phone calls I have from some of the folks at the state level out of Tallahassee, based on the comments, were because of the press picking it up. Because obviously it starts shining a negative light on state level elected officials. So not the only reason this is something, this affects Commissioner Cole's district just like mine, Jared Williamson. Definitely not the only reason we're having the conversation, but I think the only reason we're starting to see the key up from the Water Management District as well as DOT is because of the press coverage, and that's just speaking frankly.
Okay, and I'm frankly speaking too, in the sense that I've been trying to get in front of you and others since you got elected into office and got settled in to bring this forward. During the SWIM comment period, the Surface Water Improvement Management Plan, in April of 2017, I wrote about Indian Bayou for the Water Management District. At our BARC meeting, I brought up Indian Bayou, as did you, to Paul Thorpe back in April or May. So this has been an ongoing project, And if citizens can't come to their elected officials and have some sort of a action without going to the press to get more action, that's a real big disappointment. So since actions speak louder than words, and we requested a meeting with all the entities and decision makers, maybe you could help us to get a meeting together with Water Management, DOT, Santa Rosa County, DEP, and if necessary, we could get EPA Region 4, which is a federal entity that has oversight, so that we could have a meeting that's respectful and discuss the options. That's what we're requesting, and that's what we would like to have. Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this issue. Any further comments by members of the public or members of the board? Hi, yeah, please come forward. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Judy Walker. I live at 2609 San Clemente in Monterey Shores. This is the third time that I've come before the board at the monthly meeting, and I only want to say that the last time we had the opportunity to make public comments, the meeting ended with us being referred to BOCCreg, the Bay Area Resource Council, as if it were our problem and that we should pursue a solution with another entity. And now, based on all of the information that's been gathered and letters that we've seen, it does seem, and just knowing the geography of what we're talking about, it does seem that there is interaction between Water Management District, FDOT, Santa Rosa County, and Army Corps of Engineers. And we, as private citizens, don't have the power or the authority to call all of these entities together. We get nowhere approaching them as private citizens. We live in Santa Rosa County, and it seems reasonable that we could expect support and help from Santa Rosa County to get to the bottom of this. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized.
Ma'am, if I might, I recall that meeting. The chair had to leave, and I took over the chair for the balance of that meeting. And the only reason I didn't want to pass the buck, but I thought collectively that after serving as long as I had on Bay Area Resource Council, that we may be a better place to start and have a more collective voice as the council moving forward with this. And I'm sorry you got the impression I was trying to pass the buck, but the buck would have been passed to myself and Commissioner Parker and other people that serve on the Bay Area Resource Council. So I apologize if you got that impression.
Follow up, Ms. Albrecht?
Thank you. And as I do sit on the Bay Area Resource Council Technical Advisory Committee, I would just like this committee to know that although the Technical Advisory Committee will be meeting next week, the BARC has canceled that meeting, and it will likely not be rescheduled until either October, November, or maybe next year. So if we had just waited for it to go in front of the BARC, we would be kicking the can down the road. So I'm glad that we were able to discuss it today.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Vice Chairman Cole.
Of course, at the time of the last meeting, I had no way of knowing that we were going to cancel that BARC meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, when it's time, I'd like to speak, I guess, a motion that I'd like to make. Wait for comments from them.
Yeah, I think that this would probably be the appropriate time. We've had the update now that was on the agenda, and I was going to move on to what the will of the board would be, if anything, as far as an action related to this item. So it's up to you and Commissioner Parker to kind of drive the bus on this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd appreciate board support to ask staff to prepare the meeting as requested with the citizens and the entities that are involved. And at that time, that particular meeting could be noticed to the public, therefore falling under all the sunshine requirements that we have to have, and the entire board could be present if necessary, or just puts kind of me and Commissioner Parker in a dilemma to meet with the citizens other than doing it on a separate basis. So if this was an advertised meeting, it'd be certainly up to the rest of the board, but it would give me and Commissioner Parker the opportunity to sit in that meeting together.
Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
Yeah, I strongly support that motion to staff. I would only caveat that with further, I would appreciate if we are going to have those entities, if maybe we could ask the DOT Secretary Gaynor to join us, as well as all of our local state delegation, because I will say to the lady's comment, and trust me, I know how you feel, because we've dealt with many citizens that say, you know, I feel like my voice isn't anything. And I think what you saw representative here today of the folks that turn out in support of the Navarre Park, especially I'm sure probably is an initiative to Commissioner Williamson to ask people to show up and support, is the same way, you know, that just like Mr. Bailey had helped with getting people here when we talked about stormwater issues, is that when people do get together and let elected officials know, not only at the local level, but at the state level, because we're definitely talking about both levels, that there is a concern and they'll be held accountable. That is usually when you do see action done. So I would just ask that we try to get the delegation in, and I think it would be incumbent upon yourself, even though we would like to think in a utopia world that it wouldn't be necessary for citizens to be there, but encourage all those along the bayou and the watershed to attend that meeting, and especially since it'll be a public meeting, and I think we would be glad to host it here unless there's a better venue that's provided.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Vice Chairman Cole.
One other item on that, too. I would like to ask that Public Works do a moratorium on any further grading of San Juan, and apply whatever best practices we can, best management practices we can, to any type of retention or filtration of any runoff water on San Juan until we can address this.
Okay, and Commissioner Parker?
I will definitely strongly support and second that motion for the moratorium as well.
Okay. I'm just curious, it always helps me if there's going to be a meeting, that what would be the goal when staff reaches out to the request of these different agencies to be there? I know the common sense thing would say, we want to solve the problem. We want to fix it. But could we drill down a little bit deeper than that, to where after that meeting, how would we know that it was a success? In your mind, what would you think, Vice Chairman Cole?
Mr. Chairman, I would think we need to indicate to the other entities, as far as a delegation of blame, I guess, for no better sense of the word. I mean, if we have access now to all sort of technology. The drone pictures show it, still pictures show it. So how do we equate that to, okay, this is Santa Rosa County's portion of the problem, this is a state via their contractor's portion of the problem, the intent on how quickly it can be resolved, both management of the current situation, how do we avoid this from happening again? And we all know the deluge we got in stormwater all of a sudden, you know, a few months ago. And there is breakdown in what you plan to do. You know, silt fencing fails, hay bales become overcome, water just gets too dang deep to do anything with. But why hasn't something been done to go back and rectify that? So I think the citizens need to formulate some questions, not just like we do here. We ask that somebody represent the citizen voice and not hit them with the same questions over and over again, but come to them with a common voice. And you know, we certainly can't foresee the outcome, but I think delegation of blame and a good voice of what the citizens expect are two things that I would like to see come out of that. And then after that, a set time period, a timetable on rectification of the problem, and then a little longer timetable on long-term solution.
Hopefully, staff was picking up those specific requests and action items related to the meeting. I think it goes without saying, we can invite DOT to the party and the other folks that are the stakeholders in this to the party, but there's no guarantee that they're going to show up. So I just have one question from the Santa Rosa County side of things, because that's really all that I have a part in. If we were to pave San Juan, would that solve the problem that we're seeing, or would it still exist?
Well, I think that certainly if you pave a dirt road, you're going to lessen any sedimentation because you can stabilize the ditches, and therefore you should somewhat seal it off. There are some other roads other than San Juan that are dirt in the area, so it may be more than just San Juan. But to answer your question, paving a dirt road certainly helps, if not solves the majority of any sedimentation issues on a road like that.
And that's part of our ongoing approved multi-year implementation plan restore projects, right?
That's correct. It's on that list.
The fines notwithstanding and the actions from DOT and others, when would we anticipate those projects moving forward, just as a,
I would
idea?
anticipate that we would probably discuss that. I believe that's the second on our list, that dirt road paving. I would anticipate that would come to this board for further discussion prior to the first of the year.
Okay. I know there'll be other options discussed, and there's been other solutions brought forward today that could be discussed at this proposed meeting, but that would be good to know from a Santa Rosa County standpoint. This is what we've already got teed up. If there's no other comments or questions on this, we've got the direction to staff. You request one more follow-up? Barbara, yeah, please come forward.
Thank you. Paving that road would be a mistake. That road is in a wetland system. It's tidally influenced. That's kind of what we determined last year when we were doing our study. When DOT came along and cleared out the ditches in January of 2016, prior to the expansion work, they cleared out the ditch for the little creek that goes underneath the interstate. And in doing so, we realized that that system is tidally influenced. The emergent grasses that were in that ditched-in area that had overgrown for probably 20, 25 years were acting as a filter. So when the county grades that road, that 1 mile long red clay road that has no homes on it, and the water, we have a rain event and the water ends up in the ditch, that water stays on the north side of the interstate until the tide goes out. And then it is carried into that lobe of Indian Bayou where Monterey Shores is located. That's the part that Santa Rosa County is connected to. Interstate 10, Avalon Boulevard, that's all DOT. But there's a couple of parts working here. And frankly, nobody cleaned out the interstate right-of-way ditches until this expansion project happened. And Mother Nature, being the great engineer that she is, she self-healed herself from the fact that that system was fragmented. Had DOT utilized some of their hydrologists, they would have actually looked at that system, realized the mistake that they had made in the 70s, and maybe offered a small spanning bridge to go over that box culvert to allow regular flow. But that property on the north side of Interstate 10 and to the west of Avalon, that's all platted out, that has no homes on it, should be returned into a wetland system. It is a tidal salt marsh wetland system. It is hydraulically connected. And we fragmented it like putting a rubber band on your arm until there was no circulation. And then when the DOT came along and removed those grasses, like cutting that rubber band, all of a sudden there was circulation again. Look at this system holistically. I'm the president of the Brim Fishermen's Association. I collect water quality samples in Santa Rosa County, Okaloosa, Fort Walton, Escambia, and in Alabama every month. And guess what? Sedimentation is our #1 issue. Turbidity because of clay clouds out our water column. We're having a real problem. The data I collect is utilized by the state and the county to make numeric nutrient criteria decisions. The state uses our data to decide what's good and bad about water quality in our system. I'm offering you my advice and my expertise to reconnect this system. It's a no-brainer. We could make it into a mitigation bank. We could probably find buyers for it ASAP. I've been working behind the scenes, but all I've asked for all along is to have a meeting with the decision makers. Why is that so difficult? We've spent more time skirting the issue. I've spent 1.5 years collecting data. Come on, we can move this forward. It could be a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we have direction from staff on that. If there's no other questions, then Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
Just two real quick for the county attorney. And I know we'd have to have board support, but could we, do you see that it would maybe be feasible if the board would support us to draft a letter and send to the property owners along that road to see, for one, I guess, first off, if any of them were willing to deed over the property to the county, such as some that have come before. And I know we've said, well, it's really had no value, and we've tried not to be in the land business, but that would give us an idea of financial impact or possibly mitigating the impact if we were to abandon that roadway, since there would still be access to the public park.
If the board direct, we could contact them. There's some 100+ that are immediately adjacent to the roadway, and other parcels that would be behind that would have access only from that roadway. So I think it's it'd be a pretty large undertaking to do that.
I know, and again, I've talked with staff, and this is almost one of those where we start looking at the complexity where it seems unsurmountable. And I guess the unfortunate thing is it goes back to, we identify a problem, and then we see the complexity and just the largeness. So I will definitely give Ms. Albrecht the benefit of the doubt where it does seem where we just, I think we've had at least 3 presentations on it, and it doesn't seem that I can't really show the citizens where we've taken any actionable items on this. I think hopefully this meeting will help. But I guess that was just one thought. And the second thought was, and again, I only say this because I know we've all said before at different times in previous meetings where we say, the difference between, the different funds, and just like general fund versus bed tax funds, seeing how we do have 2 boat ramps right there, as well as the RV park and the hotel that you were able to see in the presentation that are both bed tax collectors. Would that work to where maybe we would have some funds to work with outside of general funds for these mitigation things that are going towards protecting the waterways, which I think we could clearly establish are, 2 boat ramps that get used by visitors right in the, obviously a lot of locals too, but right in the proximity of where some of these folks would come and stay for fishing tournaments or recreation on the water. Is that a possibility?
It would take a finding of fact from the board that the primary purpose of the expenditure of the tourism development funds was to promote tourism. And I think that's a pretty good stretch in regard to buying property.
No, not the buying property, but maybe funds to step towards protecting the waterway. I didn't see where that was a lot different with what we talked about earlier, was it was allowable use to protect the waterway. I mean, that's our bay. People, as well as obviously everything downstream of there. I'm just looking for options here that we would have, because ultimately, just like's been said before, everything comes down to affordability and dollars and cents, so I didn't know.
Well, ultimately, that's a determination by the board, but it has to be supported by competent, substantial evidence, essentially. And again, I'm not really sure that we're going to be able to make that case. We certainly could look at it.
Yeah, I do want to clarify that I was not, in my presentation or comments at any time, inferring that we would be spending tourism dollars on stormwater conveyance features. So I did mention parking in support of the Tourist Information Center or the Butterfly House or the restroom or things of that nature, but I just wanted to make sure I clarified that was not my intent of asking for a portion of those dollars to go toward that, and I don't believe that this would be an allowable use under the statute.
May have been misinformed, but I guess I thought that was obviously a big part of that project, was to protect that water from the watershed, the runoff, and the different systems. But we couldn't use any of that money? We couldn't use TDC for that?
It's a part of the project, but I'm not suggesting that we use TDC dollars to fund that portion of the project.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, good discussion, and Vice Chairman Cole, along with Commissioner Parker, had recommended specific items related to the meeting and what would like to be accomplished by that meeting and who to invite. Now that staff will be following up on that. Does staff need any further direction on this item before we move on, Tony?
No, just to say to try to get all these folks, make it available to them, I would, especially with the legislative members, I'm guessing we're looking at least 30 days out to get that scheduled. So that they've got time to work their schedules.
If they even agree to.
We'll work on that, but I wouldn't expect it to be in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, we're now moving on to our regular agenda. No items for economic development. We do have administrative committee. And the first item there is related to the Navarre Beach Pier operations, the shortlisting of, I believe we had 11 proposals, and then one of them withdrew, so that brought us to 10. And hopefully, we have a top 4 consensus.
We do, sir. We have 3 proposers that received 4 votes each. That's Johnny Houston's Grill and Bar, Mr. Bernakis and Mr. Cook, and the Navarre Beach Pier LLC. And then we have 1 proposal that received 3 votes, Growing Santa Rosa Enterprises, so that gives you a down select to 4. The rest of the proposals received 2 or fewer votes.
Okay, so we have our top 4. Do we believe Commissioner Lenchard has requested that we read these into the record?
They should be, that's correct.
Okay, so Dan, if you'd like to take care of that.
All right. District 1 Commissioner, his 5 selections were Johnny Houston's Grill and Bar, Ian Capel and Yolanda Wells, Mr. Bernakis and Mr. Cook, Growing Santa Rosa Enterprises, and the Navarre Beach Pier LLC. District 2 Commissioner Cole selected 8599 Navarre Pier LLC, Pasco Gibson Jr. and Dominic Galliano III, Ian Capel and Yolanda Wells, and Mr. Bernakis and Mr. Cook. District 3, Commissioner Salter selected Johnny Houston's Grill and Bar, Bernakis and Cook, Growing Santa Rosa Enterprises, Navarre Beach Management and Holdings LLC, and the Navarre Beach Pier LLC. District 4, Commissioner Williamson selected 8599 Navarre Pier, Johnny Houston's Grill and Bar, Bernakis and Cook, Fusion World, and the Navarre Beach Pier LLC. And District 5, Commissioner Lenchard selected Pasco Gibson and Dominic Galliano, Johnny Houston's Grill and Bar, Growing Santa Rosa Enterprises, Fusion World, and the Navarre Beach Pier LLC.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Cole.
For the record, the way they were named off by each commissioner was not a ranking.
No.
I just wanted that in the record.
Yep, that was, we just need to put 5 down. We didn't need to put what the rankings were. The next time that we take care of this would be what date? And do we need to put some guardrails today on what the presentation process would be?
The proposed date was week of October 9th. We could do it either, schedule it for a time Monday afternoon, set a time, schedule a special meeting that week, or schedule it Thursday mid-morning, assuming the Thursday with the consent agenda might be a shorter meeting, whichever you prefer there. But I think also some guidelines or specific criteria. I know Monday we talked about financial surety and things such as that. If there are other key elements that you think need to be presented by these four groups, then I think if you wanted to discuss that now, we can include that in the notification letter.
When is the next meeting in Tiger Point Community Center? Just curious. It's in November? All right. That ain't gonna work.
We did set, Mr. Chairman, we did set at our last, part of our last, not that we can't change that, but as part of our previous work, we did set 1:30 on the 9th as the time to hear these.
Okay, and I'm sure that, Tony, you'll be mindful of how robust the agenda would be in and around these dates, because these are probably going to take a bit of time.
As best we can.
Okay. I don't know how the board feels, but I thought that when we were getting the presentations recently, and we had a 15-minute time limit, that I could have seen that being a little bit longer. They seemed a little bit rushed to get through all of their information. So I'd certainly support a extended time. You have a recommendation, Commissioner Lynchard?
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest a 15-minute limit on presentations with an additional 15 minutes for questions,
Okay.
follow-ups, so 30 minutes per. That way, I think that gives us enough time to flesh out the proposals in full.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I did, Commissioner Parker, go ahead.
I don't know if maybe we could, even if we kept the presentation 15, maybe extend the question and answer, because I'd hate for me to get talking and asking questions, and then none of y'all get the chance to.
That's a good point. We can limit Commissioner Parker's
You're right.
questioning.
I think you limit me and Rob, and you're probably gonna be all right. But,
I think 15 minutes for questions, we can always, we have the discretion to run over in our questioning by a few minutes. That's not an issue. Or we can allocate 30 minutes for questioning. We have four proposals to listen to that afternoon. So 45 minutes per. That'd be 3 hours scheduled. I think 30 minutes per.
I just,
with
if we're
the
gonna set a
discretion
cap,
to
I know
run
we'd
over.
wanna stick to it, because then the next group coming through, maybe the best way to do, would be if we set it, and I'm not trying to be funny, but a cap per commissioner. Some commissioners may have none, but if we had, what's that, 3 times 5, if we had 3 minutes each to ask questions, and the only reason I say it doesn't have to be me, I say it jokingly, but if one commissioner has questions and we're keeping it to 15 minutes, it doesn't get to the next guy. But if we go 45 minutes and the next group's sitting there and they're thinking, well, where does it end? I don't know. If we're gonna set guidelines, I'd like to stick to them, but that's why I thought maybe, like Commissioner Williamson said, we extend it out. I don't know if we say 20 minutes and 20 minutes, or they definitely, both people that gave presentations that day kept referring to, well, I'm gonna try to rush and keep it brief with 15.
Yeah, as far as the comment, I feel like we have proposals. I don't know if there are questions going into this that we can get answered ahead of time, the board can. Like we talked about, and I'll come right back to the time with Mr. Parker, but we mentioned creditworthiness as being one of the criteria that we want to drill down a little bit deeper on. Will we be getting the proof of that creditworthiness ahead of time to where the board could review it? That way, the question and answer period may be when folks may be prepared to ask questions ahead of the meeting, you know what I'm saying? But we'll have a lot of that support material ahead of time. Will we be getting additional material ahead of the meeting?
I think and certainly we're looking for guidance from the board so that when we communicate with the four, we can provide them the best information to assist them in aiding in their presentation. I do believe that we certainly could ask for them to submit any information, and the more specific the board can be about what they would like to see would be better. I believe we could communicate that to the individual proposers and ask them to supply that to us at their earliest convenience, and then we could
Okay.
communicate that to the board.
This may get us back to the answer, help us answer the question about the length of time for the interviews. So I will go ahead and throw out there that creditworthiness and evidence of success in the areas, of food and beverage and retail would be important to me. And delivering the significant capital improvements that are part of their proposal within 24 months. We have some proposals that stretch it out to 5 years. I feel that that is too long to wait to see significant capital improvements. So if they want to do a phased approach, I feel that a significant portion of the capital improvements that are proposed should be completed within the first 24 months. And then lastly, specifically, how they are going to grow the revenue, year-over-year revenue, and improve the brand. Those things would be things I would want to either see backup information on ahead of time or something that they would cover as part of the meeting. And then obviously internally, what we do with the agreement, I think we learn over time. We learned a little bit after the first operator. We learned a little bit after the second operator. I expect that Roy will be giving us an even better agreement, a lease agreement that would be structured when we do ultimately select somebody. I'm fine with the 30-minute recommendation by Commissioner Blanchard. By the way, however we structure that, 15 for the presentation and 15 for Q&A, I'm comfortable with that.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, I'll offer up that you might want to ask for would be some sort of a professional opinion. Certainly that could be a licensed contractor or other professional that might provide the proposer an estimated cost of improvements. People can tell us a number, but without some third party, someone providing you some evidence, I know you're going to base your selection composite with all this information, but certainly how one might derive the cost of the improvement that they indicate would be important to know.
Absolutely. If they're saying that they're going to bring $5 million in capital improvements, how did they come up with that number for the $5 million? That's valid. And Commissioner Parker, would you want to go maybe 20 minutes with Q&A to where we do 15 minutes for presentation and add another 5 minutes where you have up to 20 minutes for question and answer? And maybe every commissioner gets up to two questions, or no more than two questions. Then we're not limiting the time, but we're limiting the number of questions. Would that
You could even cut out Q&A. I'd be satisfied, but whichever way I'll go on that is fine. If we pick a guideline, I would like to see us stick to it for every presenter to have as equal a shake as possible was my main concern. I piggyback real quick. I guess an idea that goes in tandem with what the chairman and the county administrator just mentioned is maybe if ahead of time, and I know a lot of them had it in their proposals, that they provide us that estimate of the amount that they plan to invest, whether that be on infrastructure or whatever changes. And then based on that amount, they could show ability to pay. That, again, is kind of similar to what you do in the commercial world, whether that be a line of credit or, just a simple thing from a CPA or a lender saying, they do have funds available to secure this amount. It's no different than you would do if we were selling a piece of property to somebody. And that would give us a specific. It doesn't have to be open-ended, but it could match whatever funds they are stating they'd spend. And then the second one will come off kind of comical. I'm sure I mentioned it to our assistant administrator, but this is the truth. A lot of us will go to one restaurant and visit one time, but if it's not good, we're not going back. So, I don't, by no means to encourage, but if I was asking to open a restaurant, I'd probably bring some samples of the food that they plan to serve, because all jokes aside, we've got people, even some of these that submitted things that rightfully said they've never ran a restaurant. And so I'm just sharing that with them, I know it'll be in the afternoon, but that'd be a lot for me to consider was one over the other.
You definitely put it out there, man. Yep.
I'm hungry to the meeting.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a proposal that I could support. So we'll see if folks want to step their presentation game up. You know, you've let them know what you're looking for. So I think that's a good recommendation. All right. Any other comments from members of the board? Are we good with that? I like Commissioner Parker's recommendations there on their creditworthiness based on what capital improvements they'd be bringing or what the amount would be. And 15 and 20? Or, yeah, okay. 15 presentation and up to 20 minutes for Q&A. Doesn't mean we have to go that long. All right, there's nothing else. Staff has direction on that, and we will be notifying the folks that were on the short list. Congratulations to those, and thank you to the other candidates. And I know that the current provider has withdrawn from trying to participate in the renewal, so I just want to say thank you for their time. I know they've got a few months left, but I just want to say thank you for their service and taking care of that very important county asset. And now, item number 2 is the legislative priorities. Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and if you might should let Dan do it. I know that you talked about this on Monday, and we did try to organize, I believe as had been requested, into the general support issues and then the committee for those where they would be processed through a specific committee of the legislature. That's what you have in your backup. And if you have any questions or additions to this list, we'd be glad to add those, and we'll bring that back for a final look in case there are additions for adoption at the next set of meetings.
Well, I would, following up on the comments from earlier and the comments from the previous meeting, I would like to support Commissioner Lynchard's recommendation to add, let's say, second-tier requests, or I don't know how we want to term them, but we had the Miracle League request would be one of them, and I'd like to add the Black Hawk Memorial Phase 2 request for the Navarre Park plan to be put on there. I think supporting Commissioner Cole's request about the City of Milton and their efforts there to replace the wastewater treatment plant, that would be one of the ones that's key. The one that I would like to just make a recommendation for a minor change on would be the use of tourism dollars for law enforcement. I feel as though that might be a little broad. I would be supportive of that if it was event-specific. And I would certainly think that it would be very easy for us to add elements to our lifeguard program that could very easily have lifeguards be funded all or in part from tourism collections. I think all you'd have to do is maybe have a lifeguard competition involving our Santa Rosa County lifeguards, something there that would attract other lifeguards from the area to come here for that competition. And as part of that competition, then you could definitely say that the funding and support of our lifeguards, all or in part, would be for the purpose of supporting tourism. I don't know what our county attorney would say on that, but to me, you know, you have the lifeguards at the beach. That's something that's a constant that we're always going to be providing, and you could definitely say that 70% of the revenue comes from folks coming to the beach. So lifeguards, the beach, and that might be something that would we could make the connection on. Law enforcement, unless it's event specific, I feel that may be more difficult to get support for. Roy, do you have comments on that?
The lifeguard issue has been in other jurisdictions related to a Safe Shores campaign and advertising campaign, and it has been justified as a part of that tourism-oriented advertising campaign. So I think that we could look at doing something in that respect.
Okay. It does definitely falls into the public safety realm. My concerns would just be including law enforcement on that one. I don't, like I said, if it's event-specific, you know, those days where we have extraordinary traffic and we need to help get people off the island for the Blues weekend or Memorial Day weekend or things of that nature, well, absolutely. That would be my only consideration in rewording that request. Any other members of the board have requests to change, amend, add to the legislative priorities? Commissioner Parker?
One comment and then one change. Obviously, we've seen the email that got circulated, and it's funny how people on the same board can be going after similar things, and we know nothing about it because of sunshine restrictions. You'll see with Paul Henson, I just want to sort of make note, there's definitely been other commissioners that have looked at the all-inclusive park as a request of citizens such as Mr. Harris that's come to the board. I didn't try to move that forward at the time based on the Pensacola Miracle League stating that they didn't feel that there was enough users to justify trying to divide on the north end, but in hopes of kind of that issue that was, I know Commissioner Lyncher brought up and said in a response to Jared Williamson's request, Representative Williamson, that we give them different tiers. I mean, again, I don't know how loosely or structured we need to have for the priorities, but even if there was a low-hanging fruit, so to speak, of a 50,000 or 100,000 that could go towards sidewalk projects, and I guess part of trying to look at saying we've got the Pea Ridge Pace bicycle path plan now, so that maybe we could show we had a plan. Any funding we could get towards that, I think, would definitely improve. We've had obviously recent fatalities with pedestrians along our roadways. So I don't know if that's something we could add just in case, like you said, they come back and it's all these big money projects. I mean, even if it was $50,000, that would still be a huge help over nothing.
Okay. What's the will of the board? I don't have an issue with it. I don't know what bundle it would go under. I'm fine with it.
I mean, even if we asked for $50,000 for, I know one big issue that's about to come online in the areas, especially with me and Commissioner Salter, are right by Pace High School. They're building that athletic training facility, and those kids are going to have to walk right along the roadway. And I mean, there's nothing but a ditch, and they're expecting several hundred kids to be leaving the high school every day going there. And, you know, we're only talking a quarter-mile stretch, and it is part of that plan that West Florida Regional Planning Council put together. And so I'm hoping maybe that would help with getting that legislative money by showing we had a plan for that. Even if we were just asking for $50,000, I would think they might be able to find that.
Okay. Yeah. Staff, can we add in Commissioner Parker's recommendations to the list?
Sure.
I had one question. Dan, had you looked at I see we have quite a bit listed on the Ag and Natural Resource Appropriation Subcommittee, and I did not see the Transportation and Tourism Committee on there, and Representative Williamson had mentioned that would be one that we would want to focus in on because we have some pretty good relationships there. So as you're finalizing the list, I'm not suggesting we add anything on there, but just maybe add that committee on there, and then maybe we want to figure out what items you feel should go on there through Johnson and Blanton's help with that. But I would think that some of the requests, I don't know if the Whiting Aviation Park, if we'd have a better opportunity for funding, if that was relocated over into that committee, but getting the $600,000 for the design for that is, I would think that would be important. So whatever they think would best position that project, and then any other ones that they feel are tourism related, we put in there. Miracle League facility might be, Black Hawk Memorial might be. So just in the transportation, the sidewalk infrastructure projects that were mentioned. Okay.
Yeah, I think we have contacted John and asked for his sort of advice and binning these. This is our first cut at that.
Okay.
So we'll
I'm sure
get
you
that
guys will
feedback
pretty
from
it
him.
up. I just wanted to make mention of that.
Got it.
Moved on. All right, if there's no other questions or comments from the board, then I will move approval of the legislative priorities with the additional items mentioned today. All right, hearing none, no objections, the legislative priorities for next year are approved. We're going to go down to item number 4, the meeting list. You have those items there in front of you. I'm not going to read them into the record, but I would move approval of the September meeting list without objection. Hearing no objection, those dates are approved. And commission fees. Okay. Back to item number 3, JDL property decision. Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe that you have in your backup the information that we have provided. I believe you discussed that on Monday. And in terms of the board's decision for purchase or not purchase of the property, we are obligated, if we desire to purchase it, to make them aware within the next week or so. I believe October 2nd is the deadline, so we would need to make a decision about this direction.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say before the board goes to a vote on this that whatever the decision of the board today, I agree with comments that were made on Monday that we vote how we believe would be best, and whatever the decision is, then we regroup and try to figure out a way to, bottom line, get it done. So I will now, at this time, entertain a motion for the approval. I would think that would be coming. Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
Thank you. And that is extremely encouraging to hear your comments. And I appreciate that very much. So at this time, I'd make a motion that we allow our attorney to go ahead and move forward with purchasing this property so that we can all look forward to that being the new home of our judicial center.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a properly formatted motion and a second by Vice Chairman Cole. At this time, we will go to a vote. All those in favor of purchasing the JDL property at a price of $850,000 signify by raising your right hand. Let the record show that Commissioners Parker, Vice Chairman Cole, and Commissioner Salter voted approval. The motion passes. All those opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Let the record show that Commissioner Williamson and Commissioner Lynchard voted opposed. The motion carries. And direct staff to notify the owner. And I guess the next step would be to bring the purchase agreement back, and the board would approve that. Do we know when that would happen, since we're certain to get questions on what the next step would be?
Well, I'll notify them today, and we'll put together the sales contract and bring it back next meeting.
Okay. And, well, that's not before us today. Okay. That disposes of that item. That concludes the
Just real quick.
Administrative Committee. Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
Is that a requirement that the sales contracts comes back? And the only reason I say that is just unfortunately if maybe one member wasn't here, whether it be due to illness or something, I'd hate to be at a gridlock at that point. If we're making the decision today, is that good enough? Or
It's a pretty much a formality, I would think, but it's public record. We're going to have the opportunity to review it. But, I mean, we've already voted to, the motion carried to purchase the property. So.
I understand that we're just putting the contract, it's merely formalizing the board's decision today, but it's still going to have to be executed.
Does that have to be a board vote?
I
What if
think-
one of the three parties in favor, and then we're back to a 2-2, and then the time limit on the contract expires is the only reason I'm asking.
I think the board could direct the chairman to execute the contract that I would put together today, if that would be the wishes of the board.
I would like to make a motion to do that, just because we don't know if we'll have a full board in the future meeting.
Would it be possible for me to defer the authorization of that contract to the Vice Chairman? Or am I required to sign it as chair? Yes? Okay.
Make that motion without objection.
What's the motion?
To allow the chairman to sign the document that the attorney drafts, and that we don't have to vote to approve whatever document he drafts. That you can sign whatever documents in the future.
The contract is going to be a purchase of the property for $850,000. We're going to be paying closing costs. The transfer of the title will be as soon as possible. We have already received and reviewed the title commitment. There aren't any title issues in regard to the property. So, I mean, it is going to be a contract that merely memorializes what the board says today. There are not going to be any additional provisions that I would understand would be a part of the contract document.
And we already signified how we were paying that. Can you remind me again of where the funding source is coming from that? Is that unrestricted reserves?
I believe that's correct.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Hearing no objection, Commissioner Parker's motion to allow the chairman to sign all related documents is approved without objection. All right, now moving on to the engineer's report. Blue Water Holding, Santa Rosa County Construction and Demolition Debris Facility Permit. Tony.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is for approval of the Blue Water Holding permit to operate and construct a demolition and debris disposal facility off Jeff H. Road in East Milton.
Any members of the public wish to address the board on this matter? Good morning. Good name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Jesse Rigby, Clark Partington in Pensacola, 125 West Ravenna Street, and I'm here representing the applicant. I'm going to be very brief. And first, with the chairman's permission, I'd like to ask Mr. McGuire to come up to address specifically Commissioner Cole's question concerning capacity on the wastewater stream. I believe that question was raised on Monday.
Yeah, Jerry McGuire, JMA Engineering Services, Pace, Florida. After Mr. Cole the other day brought up about the capacity of the city of Milton to accept flows from the plant, went and met with them, and they have sent an email, which I've since then forwarded on to each commissioner, and also to Mr. Blaylock, Mr. Hickson, and all that. So they do have capacity. They're about 80% capacity on their treatment plant. And also they have sufficient capacity and more than we need in order to be able to take our leachate from our field, our pit, to their facility and all. So there is available capacity, okay?
I recognize this has been a contentious issue in the past. And what the applicant has brought to you is frankly an opportunity to resolve the vast majority of this Harris Act lawsuit. It would resolve all the aspects of it that relate to the actual loss of the property right itself if this permit were granted. Just a couple of key points. It meets all of the county requirements. We have the state required permit. We know that the Blue Water facility under today's regulations would be constructed with a liner system, very similar, if not identical, to what you have at the central landfill. We, I think, all recognize that in the event of any events like Harvey or Irma in this area, there's going to be a significant increased need to C&D capacity. And I would suggest, your decision, of course, that the central landfill for municipal solid waste is a valuable asset of the county, that its airspace needs to be reserved to the extent possible for municipal solid waste. I think there's a recognition generally now, and I know that Commissioner Salter mentioned it, about the grandfathered status. The testimony is clear from your staff. The development order under which this permit would be granted was in force long before the regulation for the well field protection area. I'd also comment, of course, that the borrow pit aspect of it, the digging of the hole, has an operational permit issued pursuant to the same development order that's issued to Blue Water Holdings. So again, it's your decision today. This does resolve the significant aspect of the case. What it does leave open, and I don't want there to be any misunderstanding, is the issue concerning what could be called a portion of the just compensation damages running from February 2013, when the permit was denied by the board, up until the time the permit is issued. And there are issues on both sides of that would be addressed by the court. But the value of the property, the value of the loss of the property right, which is the right to operate the C&D facility, would be resolved by the granting of a permit. And we'd be happy to try to answer any questions the board might have today.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Parker, you recognize.
Just for clarification in my mind, I understand there's obviously two different entities involved in this property, the entity that retains the right to dig the borrow pit, and then the entity that I believe we're discussing in front of us today that's wanting to operate a construction and debris landfill. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. Is irregardless of the action today, does that limit the person that's retaining the rights to mine the dirt? You had mentioned an operation, or, you know, that they had a concurrent one. Could they go out there and in essence start mining the dirt off of the property irregardless of what decisions made today?
Yes, sir, they can. Santa Rosa Soils has that right today and has the operational permit to do so. It obviously makes sense for both to be moved together, because there's some work that would have to be done, but absolutely Santa Rosa Soils has that right today.
Thank you.
And with all county permits to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It hurts me in the gut to approve this, but I did have a question, if I might. I was wondering how we got here today. I know that the former county attorney had authorized and opened the door basically for Blue Water to come in and receive this permit. And why that action wasn't taken today or then, that's in turn caused this action today.
I'll try to give you a history. And first of all, Roy Andrews has been uninvolved in this.
Yes,
And you've been dealing with
This
your
is a
litigation attorney, Bill and Tim Warner, completely. I'll try to give you a very, very brief history. In February of 2013, this board met to consider issuance of the same operational permit you're talking about today. That was denied. And I may be off a little bit, about a week or 2 weeks later, February the 20th, I believe, of 2013, this board authorized the ordinance that expanded the well field protection area. That ordinance prohibited for the first time construction and demolition pits and borrow pits on this property. Now, obviously, everybody that was involved knows that the commission had been considering the well field protection for months up to that point. But when the permit was denied and then the ordinance was placed into effect that prohibited borrow pits and C&D facilities about a week later, 10 days later, then that gave rise to the Harris Act, because at that point the operation was prohibited. So we moved into litigation over the Harris Act under that procedure, and that's where we are today. There's been discovery. There had been testimony from Ms. Cato primarily concerning the vested rights, the grandfathered status under the development order that was issued actually I believe it's 2008 that the development order was issued, and I have a copy of it. Under that development order, there was also litigation relating to Santa Rosa Soils. Now, it's not Harris Act, because the Harris Act wouldn't apply to it. As a result of that action, Santa Rosa Soils obtained a permit based on its grandfathered status to dig the hole that was approved by the development order issued to Blue Water Holdings. Now, that's a little convoluted, but that's where we are today.
Okay. Yes, morning. Name and address for the record, Kyle.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Kyle Hawley. My address 5920 Willard Norris Road. I don't want to be, we're not going to spend too much time on here, but I do have a couple of questions, and I appreciate the gentleman's recapping of the history of things, but I do have one question that is asked of me that I'm not able to answer, and I think now would be a great time to try to get that answer. I believe one of the Blue Water permits had expired over the course of the process, this terminology, and then I believe the county adopted the expansion of the wellfield protection ordinances, mentioned by the gentleman, and so I wanted to hear just a little bit more about that. Was there not really a break at that point, or was there really a break? Would you please explain that? Because a lot of people do want to know it. May I stay here?
Yes, I'm curious, is the attorney that's representing Santa Rosa County here today? No? Okay. Come right ahead.
With respect to the extension of the permits, the development order is the permitted issue here that was issued in 2008.
Yes.
Okay, under which this permit would be granted pursuant to the development order. That development order has been extended a number of times. It's a non-discretionary extension. It was always extended pursuant to the Florida statute that extends these development orders when the governor issues an emergency declaration for storms that apply to the particular county, Santa Rosa. I've extended that. It's a notice to the county. It's not a discretionary decision by the county commission. That development order runs now until April 2018. It will be extended one more time right now as a result of the declaration of Hurricane Irma, which will extend it approximately another 8 months, simply by giving notice to the county under that state statute. So the development orders are still in effect and legal, and I believe the county staff agrees with that.
I think I understand that and kind of suspected that, so I appreciate clarification. And that question is really more for those folks that are watching and those folks who will ask questions later. So I don't want to spend too much time really on discussion about the water, because while many of us are not going to feel great about what's about to happen, it is a time to reward you all for listening and for learning over the course of that period of time, looking at the science, making sound decisions to identify separate policy for pits, and expanding the policy. I think we see that that's the right thing to do. So I want y'all to know that I appreciate that you listened and that you learned and that you made choices that you felt like were right for the county. So while I feel like the water, the usable life of the water residentially and commercially, the life of that resource has been mostly extended. And there is some chance that there won't be contamination from this C&D pit. My comments are more related to what I would describe as a mediocre implementation of the future land use there. I think there's a higher and better use. There is some consequence. I talked a little bit about it on Monday. I do need to share. I shared with you that about 10 days ago we were asked to put together some property for a company. The landowners that are there are willing to have good, clean business come in there, and that company appeared to be. I did receive a call yesterday from local economic development that there's another company that appears to be even larger than that company looking for property, and I can't disclose too much of the information that was shared with me with regard to the jobs, but it's well over 1,000 jobs. So what we see today really is something that is, it represents a shift in the area, and it represents a shift in our capacity. And while I know that the commission does not really want to be in the land business, we are in the economic development business. And so I would just close with the thought that we continue to pursue excellence. And even after you make the choice that the decision you have to make today, they do the action you have to do today, I would just ask you to check with economic development, check with people in the departments who are responding to the requests from these companies, And if there is any chance left for excellence, I would just ask you to, respectfully to, consider that. So with that, I just tell you thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Kyle. If nobody else from the public would like to address the board on this matter, I will turn it over to the will of the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Lynchard, you're recognized.
at this time, I don't think this is a ministerial act of the board. The requirements for issuance of the permit have been met, and the board doesn't have the discretion to deny the permit. So I would move approval without objection.
I would object. I don't necessarily understand all of that. I wish I did, but can you maybe expound a little bit more on why the board would not need to vote on the matter and then make a motion to approve the item? Do we need to have a formal action to approve this authorization of the permit?
We have to approve the issuance of the permit.
Okay. This is not something that I'm going to be voting in favor of today. I'll be remaining consistent on this item as I have throughout. As I said at the last meeting, I think it's a matter of risk. I know it's not a great option that's in front of us, but this is not something that I can support, even though there's no great options here. But I don't know if that means we have to call for a second or however we have to do it, but those are, my positions remained unchanged on this item.
Mr. Chairman,
Salter.
I'll second Commissioner Lynchard's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Commissioner Parker, discussion?
Please, I'll try to keep it short. I hate to go on the record as supporting it either, for all the reasons that have been hashed out for all these years, but I do think it's important to note it. From what council's told us, we could be looking at, I don't want to use exact figures, but definitely more than that $6 million we talked about earlier today to pay if we deny this permit today. So I just want to have healthy discussion, since obviously we're not going to be a unified board, that if I'm in favor of this, the alternative is millions of dollars paid out in a lawsuit that we're currently involved in, and then the question of what services do we cut or what taxes do we raise to pay that millions of dollars. And I don't know that I'm comfortable with that, but I just want to make sure that's all out there, since I mean, basically now we're postured to either we're supporting this and the possible future, and the worst, greatest fear ever is contaminating the well water. I think it's what the huge fear is that is used for the drinking water in Navarre. But the only other option we have are millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits, from what the attorneys told me. So I'm just maybe throwing that out there for Commissioner Lynchard. Could you just clarify for when it says that which board members supported it and didn't, sort of what the alternative is?
Yeah, it's like, at this point, if you went down to the driver's license bureau, you passed the test, you passed the driver's test, but the clerk issuing the license refused to give you the license because they didn't think that you would be a good driver, or that they thought you would get in a wreck down the road. Well, you can't do that. You don't have the discretion to make that call. You've met all of the requirements at this point. The permit's issued. We're already facing a lawsuit for a Burt Harris Act claim for actions that this board took years ago to protect our water quality out in East Milton. And it's a shame that we're here. I don't want to approve this either. I wish we could do all that we can to protect our water quality that serves East Milton and the rest of the county. We had another member of Mr. Rigby's firm was here earlier arguing on behalf of people who want to protect our water quality. So we're between a rock and a hard place at this point, and we don't have the discretion to deny the permit, and that's why I moved approval.
The only, Commissioner Parker, the only two options as I understand them, and the part that I wasn't understanding was the motion for something that I thought you were saying that we had to approve no matter what, and that's why I objected. We do have options. The only options we have, though, are to, one, approve the permit, or two would be to acquire, or 3, I guess, you could deny the permit, at which case there's estimated between 8 and 10 million, I guess, or somewhere in that ballpark that could be possibly on the hook for. And then there's the option to possibly acquire the property. And what would that mean? And that's why I'm saying the same comments, or echoing the same comments that I said before. This decision today, in my mind, is about risk. And by approving this today, then we're saying that the risk of a future contamination of our water source is so minimal in your mind and others' minds, evidently, that willing to go ahead and approve it. And I understand the restrictions that are placed on landfills now and the permitting and how unbelievably strict these measures are to protect against contamination. In my mind, there is another option out there, and it would be a significant option, but it would eliminate the risk of contamination. And it would require, likely, you got to acquire the property through eminent domain, more than likely, if there's not a reasonable way to purchase the property, or if a purchase price cannot be agreed upon. So I'm not trying to get a free ride here today. I've been consistent since I was on the zoning board as a volunteer, speaking about the well field protection zone and the amount of research that I've done on this. It's not just that this is a bad decision, it's that in my mind, it's not an acceptable level of risk. That doesn't mean that it's not an extraordinary amount of money that would have to be paid. But basically, we're saying that we're fine with not paying that money now in exchange for the fact that we would end up paying that money possibly later. I think if there was contamination later, you're going to look at a much higher expense than you have now. So those are my comments on the item. We're still in discussion, but Commissioner Parker?
I'm going to have to ask our resident attorney, Commissioner Lynchard, on this, since the fellow from the brothers firm, I forgot their last name, isn't here. My interpretation is if we were to deny this, we would be liable, even our attorney stated we'd be liable for that sum, somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 10 million. But then on top of that, if we wanted to move forward with a purchase, I believe we'd still have to pay that and the purchase. But if we approve it, I know several of us got emails this week from a person involved in that matter that had stated there would be the possibility of selling it. And then maybe that money that would have been used for a lawsuit could go towards acquiring it. I'm just wanting to verify these facts are correct before I vote, that if we deny it, we may have to pay that money and still have to buy it if we wanted to buy it. But if we approved it, then we would have the option to maybe use that money if the board decided to buy it. I don't know, truthfully, if I could be in support of that either, but depending on the cost. But I just, again, I'm only clarifying it because I understood it from the attorney's standpoint. I'm almost asking, I guess, for a statement of fact for the record. I understood what that attorney told me, that, hey, you're either going to approve this today or you're going to pay around $9 million in lawsuits. And so I guess just as a statement of fact for the record, I'm not so much hemmed up, or I guess the question from the risk, and I appreciate it, is the risk of, okay, do we want to look at the citizens right now and say, I'm spending $9 million out of the general fund to pay for this lawsuit, or do we want to say that the risk is basically if we have I guess we think of Flint, Michigan or something, it's probably not even a good comparison, but if something happened to the drinking water in Navarre, we'd probably look back and say, if we could pinpoint it to this one project, we'd look back and say, yeah, that wasn't a good decision. Is that kind of where we're at, just for that, to make sure we're...
Commissioner Lynchard?
We can enter into discussions with Mr. Rigby's client at any time to purchase the property. We can make an offer at any time to purchase your client's property, whether or not we approve the issuance of this permit. Whether or not he accepts that offer is totally up to him. So a third party could enter into discussions likewise at any time to make an offer to purchase the property, regardless of whether or not this permit is issued. At this point, I don't see that we have the discretion to deny this permit. Again, it's a ministerial act. The requirements of for issuance of the permit have been met. We can make a stand and say, I don't want to issue the permit, but fact of the matter is, they've met the requirements that the county has in place. So we don't have the authority to deny the permit.
Mr. Chairman.
I don't want y'all to get confused. We recognize that what you need to do is issue the permit. We are asking for excellence post this action. If you are able to speak internally, if you're able to evaluate risks to the water, but more so than risk to the water at the moment. You know, the resource is clean right now. I want you to think in terms of the opportunity that may be lost there. But we want you to do what you have to do right now. It's the right thing. And then we're just asking that if there's an opportunity for excellence in one of those alternatives, we clearly would like to see business there employing a lot of people. And I appreciate, but we all need to be careful to make sure that we're not confusing the community, because some of them have really watched this. The gentleman does a fine job of explaining the history, you know, and those who will want to corroborate with staff will get consistent answers. So I think as a community, we can understand this whole thing. But today, right now, you need to do what you have to do.
I just want to say, Kyle, that, again, I'm not confused on the matter. I agree with you. I'm just sort of stating the fact, because if we're not going to be unified, then obviously it comes out that it is sort of an option. And now, you know, the last thing you want is headline of, you're the big bad wolf commissioner that supported this, and we had the option not to. So I'm okay with standing on that side of the fence. I just want, when that story hits the paper, it to be clear of the alternative of $9 to $10 million of hard-working property taxpayers' money that would have to go towards that, and it still, ultimately, I don't think would possibly not even stop it. We could still get tied up in litigation. So I just wanted that to be out there if it's not, you know.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Blaylock. Roger, do we have any intention on our landfill to subside or quit taking C&D in the near future or any time in the future, according to the master plan for the landfill?
We do not, but that's a policy decision of this board, but there's no plan to discontinue.
All right, and I say that because, you know, there was something mentioned earlier about our space, reserving our space, so I didn't want to confuse it that may be part of the issue. The other thing that I'm hoping that once this is passed is that there just won't be a requirement for this type of facility. You don't spend millions of dollars to build a facility regardless of the size unless there's a need. And perhaps what we've seen from the current hurricane, you got to count your blessings along with your disasters, but other than Key West, I think in general, with what was anticipated, the destruction all over our state was, and I'm not meaning to play it down, because certainly if it was your home, it was devastating. But I don't think all in all, it was nowhere near what it could have been. And hopefully factors like that would weigh on a business decision for the future of any facility like this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I have a 2-minute break?
Mr. Chairman, this is the last issue we have. We're in discussion. I will move again to approve the issuance of the permit without objection.
I'm asking for a couple of minutes to think about the decision that I'm about to make, which I feel very strongly about. and try not to be the one on a 4-1 vote. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. That concludes the rest of the items on today's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, we had that one add-on. If you would, oh, there's one on the back as well. Sorry, we had there was one more item on the back of the agenda and then the add-on.
Tony, would you like to, the action is to allow them use of the Visitors Information Center, is that correct?
Yes, the Escarosa, Florida.
I would move approval to allow the use of the Navarre Visitor Information Welcome Center during normal business hours for the Escarosa, Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association for a drop-off of non-perishable food and water items. Today, the 14th, the 15th, and September 18th. I'd make this motion without objection. Hearing no objection, the item is moved. Any members of the public wish?
Mr. Chairman.
Engineering services? Okay, we have.
There you go.
Item number 2, the engineering services for Santa Rosa County Regional Reuse System. Commissioner Parker requested that this be placed on the regular agenda. Do you have any comments at this time? If not, I'm prepared to move the item. I'd like to move.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chairman Cole.
at that time, I had some additional questions as far as the receivables from that, but they've been answered, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments. I would move approval of item number 2 of the engineering services for Santa Rosa County Regional Reuse System without objection. Hearing no objection, item is moved. We now move to the public forum portion of today's program. Any members of the public wish to address the board? Hearing none, seeing none, we are adjourned.